the opportunity to call to order the Tuesday, April 16th, 2024 meeting of the Finance and Warrant Committee. First on our agenda is public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the board? Okay. Move over there. Name and address, please.
My name's Jennifer DeFries. I live at 220 Robert Road, Precinct 1, and I prepared a statement to read to you all tonight.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer DeFries, a resident of Dedham for 6 years and mother to Abby, who will turn 5 in May. Tonight marks my first Finance Committee meeting, and I'm here to emphasize the necessity of robust funding for the Dedham Public Schools, ensuring necessary resources for all students and staff. The issue is not just a matter of policy for me, but it's deeply personal. I see the impact of underfunding every day in my daughter's life, and I'm here to advocate for change. Let me begin by telling you a little bit about our story. Our daughter, Abby, is a remarkable child, intelligent, creative, funny, and determined. Yet she faces challenges as she navigates the world on the autism spectrum. Abby has attended the ECEC pre-K program for nearly 2 years and has an IEP for speech and communication, school readiness, and social emotional support. Initially, our time at the ECEC was fraught with challenges. Abby struggled both at school and at home, lacking the necessary support, even with her 2 30-minute IEP sessions at school. However, a turning point came when we discovered the Lark Center in Norwood, where Abby received tailored support during non-school hours. The impact was nothing short of transformative. Abby began to thrive, demonstrating significant progress. Abby continues to benefit from the combination of school-based and external services and support. We fully recognize that not all families have the means to access such vital resources, which underscores the importance of adequate funding within our schools to support students with diverse needs. Notable challenges within our district stem from underfunding and understaffing. I'll share some observations from our short time in the Dedham Public Schools. The first is the ECEC's school psychologist's recent parental leave, which was inadequately covered. This impacted essential and required student services and the pause of weekly social emotional lessons in each classroom, which are integral to the curriculum at this developmental stage. This also overburdens the staff and disrupts mandated support for students like Abby. Moreover, many teachers, specifically special education teachers, are overwhelmed when managing large integrated classes. While some classrooms are fortunate to have paraprofessionals, many do not. And even in cases where aides are present, their assistance often falls short of meeting the diverse needs of students. The spectrum of support required is broad. While one student may struggle with behavioral issues demanding regular supervision, another may silently battle anxiety equally deserving of attention. Feedback from Abby's doctors, teachers, and therapists strongly suggests that she thrives in a smaller group dynamic, an observation likely shared by many children with similar profiles. However, with 18 children in her classroom, smaller learning groups are rarely feasible. Moreover, the absence of teachers or aides due to illness or vacation amplifies this challenge, as substitutes and additional support are not consistently provided. With a 6% enrollment increase last year, our existing resources are already stretched thin. This raises a critical question. How can we effectively serve more students with fewer resources? Any further cuts, especially in areas like special education, teachers, and aides, would severely undermine the quality of education for our students. I implore all stakeholders, the Finance Committee, Town Manager, Town Meeting, and the community to prioritize investment in our students, staff, and facilities. While the Town Manager's budget is a step in the right direction, it is essential that we allocate additional funding and ensure that 100% of Chapter 70 funds are directed towards enhancing our budget. This will help us retain essential special education teachers and provide the much-needed paraprofessionals and support staff. The allocation of Chapter 70 funds indicates the state's recognition of Dedham's need for increased financial support for its schools. I urge the town to align with this understanding and act decisively to meet our school system's growing demands. As a proud parent of a special needs student, advocating for Abby has been a daunting task. I am acutely aware of the challenges faced by families who may lack the resources or confidence to voice their concerns. We must ensure that every student, regardless of their needs or background, receives the support they require to succeed. Your thoughtful consideration and commitment to our children's education mean the world to me, my family, and countless other parents in this community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Anyone else for comment? Okay. Seeing none. Couple things just before we start. On our agenda for tonight, what I'd like to do is move to the third item, which is discussion and vote, reason closed public hearing on warrant articles. Okay, we'll get to that in a second because I think there's a couple more pieces of information we need. Second thing is the will of the board and the wish of the board. What I would propose is that when we get to be about 9 o'clock or 9:15, that we wrap up and adjourn. We do have a meeting scheduled for Thursday. I think that with the important issues and important information that we have, we get to the certain point that it's difficult for, I know myself and others, to concentrate in terms of what we're doing. And this is a critical time in our process to move forward. So if that's agreeable to the board, we'll look at that, okay? Thank you. Right now, actually, everybody get this from this particular information? John, you handed it out. Could you just go over this just real quick for us and as it regards Article 11, please? Oh.
Okay. Hello, everybody. This is the consolidated utility enterprise budget. Much like every single year, we present the consolidated budget. It goes through all the revenues to the expenditures. It's a balanced budget. The little bit of tweak to it was just finalizing some of the numbers on the back end, and then also just articulating out stormwater operating piece. Now that's just it's part of the MS4 process, but those are the projects that go on. It allows the projects to just sort of continue on through fiscal years. It allows us to just encumber those funds moving year to year to year. That's really, it's just more of a, as you referenced it before, an accounting kind of a process. So that's really the baseline. I believe the change from the initial to this one is a $40,000 difference between what was originally proposed, what was originally presented to now. So that's basically it. The transfer in for indirects it came down to 1,222,922, and the total budget is $12,607,360. That is the summation of what is presented.
Any questions? Kevin?
I may have just missed this before, but I'm assuming we're not planning on underpaying the MWRA assessment.
No, for the
million.
first year, and for the first year in looking back in time, this is the first time it actually fell.
It went down.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
I have the letter from them, that's the number, so.
Great, thank
For
you.
the first year, who knows?
We save money.
A little bit, it's there.
It's always good. Anyone else? Oh, Michelle?
Just looking at our original to this one, I don't know if it was just something was separated out, but the purchase services, MS4 permitting, had been 6.5 million, and now it's 1.7, but then there seems like there's the additional line, stormwater operating capital.
Yeah, so that's the MS4 permitting, so that's when Jason Momoni comes up and talks about the MS4 permitting that's been pushed down from the EPA, that's the big change that took place this year. The way that we have it originally budgeted, it's sort of like this one-time rolling in. And so first year processing, this is the tweaking, the corrections to make sure, just the tightening it down, if you will. So the numbers built into that stormwater operating capital, it's the same use of funds, the same thing as the MS4 purchase services, MS4 services, as we talked about before. It's just we're talking about more of the capital items. Like we're talking catch basin actual cleaning, if they're going to be putting up walls or anything of that nature, if they're going to be replacing the storm drains and as a whole, that we're talking large projects, that's the capital. And again, that allows it to kind of roll forward as the end of the fiscal year rather than closing it year over.
So you're just kind of accounting for it differently,
Correct.
like
It's
breaking
just
it
an
out. from
accounting clarification.
Okay.
Anybody else? So when it comes to this article, the amount that we would be looking at is $12,607,368.
That's right.
I'll say that.
Yeah, oh yeah, it refers to the chart.
Okay,
Yeah, okay.
as long as you're set.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, thanks, John.
You're welcome.
I had mentioned that concerning Article 18, might delay that, but we have the folks here tonight from the Sustainability. This was presented at a meeting. I know might be additional questions regarding this article, so I'd ask you to come up and join us, please, if you would. You want to go first? Bring another chair if you want. And just name and address us so it's part of the minutes and things we have.
Emily Walton, 33 Eleanor Street.
I'm Dave Ward at 21 Mason Street.
Michael DeWinter, 411 East.
Thank you very much. Mike, you want to start us off?
Thanks for coming back in. Just as a follow-up to your time here before, I received some phone calls after our hearing last week, and I think there's maybe some confusion or lack of information out there pertaining to the actual cost savings versus increased costs for changing the code. So for the benefit of people who might be listening out there, if you could repeat that part of the presentation so that folks, can hear it again, and if they have questions after that, well, then we'll just deal with that accordingly. But I got a couple of calls afterwards, so thank you.
Okay, I'll start. So the opt-in stretch code, the opt-in specialized code would not cost the town any money at all, so let's start there. And in terms of actually building buildings, so for the homeowner, contractor, et cetera, all of the data that we have seen shows that it's pretty comparable. It's either the same cost or a little bit higher or a little bit lower, and that's based on the Department of Energy Resources study, which is linked in one of the documents we shared with you. Hopefully you have all the documents we shared, which basically looked at actual construction projects over a 2 or 3 year period and just looked at the cost of all of them relative to whether or not they used electric source heat, gas, fossil fuel heat, and basically just did a cost comparison. And that showed that it was basically even, and that if you factor in incentives like Mass Save, then it becomes cheaper, more cost effective. I would also highlight that by adding more energy efficiency, the cost to operate the home is significantly cheaper. So in terms of like homeowners, it's like a win. It should be cheaper, not just, well, comparable for the cost of the home and then cheaper once you are in the home to operate the home.
And again, just to clarify, this is new construction. So the new home built in Dedham or the new commercial development is what we're talking about. So existing homeowners, this adoption of the opt-in code would not impact.
If I can follow.
Certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As part of the inquiries, and I don't know if this is the right forum to answer this question, but I'll ask it anyway. There are some out there, folks out there who feel like contractors, their choice to build the way they wish to build is being complicated by this code change, and it is more expensive for the actual builders. I don't know how to answer that question, so I'm hoping you guys can share some, info for us that might help explain that.
Yeah, so one,
You.
are you sure?
Sure.
One thing I would point out, we've spoken to builders, and I think there's a little bit of confusion around the stretch code, which has been updated very recently, and building to the new stretch code, which we have to do no matter what, because we adopted the stretch code 14 years ago. And the municipal opt-in specialized code, which is in one of the I don't know if you all got the PowerPoint slides we sent. We were going to present them, but the thing was down.
I know what it is again, it's really out for you or something.
But we did share it with Nancy Weaver, so
here,
hopefully that can be shared with you. But it just shows a chart comparison of the stretch code compared to the opt-in specialized code. And the only changes for the opt-in specialized code, the only additions are pre-wiring if it's not an all-electric home, and solar. And that's it. So in terms of like deterring builders building in this community, I have not encountered a builder, and we have spoken to some, who would be deterred by just pre-wiring instead of 120 volts, adding a few more 240-volt outlets for large appliances. What else? And also on the PowerPoint slides is a list of all the other communities in Massachusetts who have already adopted the opt-in code, which is 34, I think, and it's just been open for a year and a half. So like a bunch of communities have already jumped on this, and this is kind of the trend. So Boston, Norwood, like a bunch of surrounding communities have already adopted this. So builders would presumably, if not right now, within the next 2 years, would have to go pretty far if they weren't going to build to this code, because so many communities have already adopted it.
And if I could,
Certainly.
one more. You pretty much answered the next question that I was going to ask. One of the points of interest was the fact that there were so few communities who had yet, done this. And I think there was a little bit of a misunderstanding as to what the trends might be. And you covered that. It looks like since it's only been open for a year and a half.
Yeah.
There's more to come. I mean, we don't know what the other towns are going to do, granted, but.
Yeah,
Okay.
but a lot of towns have kind of jumped right on it initially because it's a way to reach the state's climate goals, which the state is going to be increasing pressure on communities to do.
Okay.
And this would be a way that we could do it probably as affordably as possible, because we would be targeting new construction that hasn't been built yet.
Okay, I am officially done. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin?
I assume you've seen the letter from Paul Bailu,
Oh,
who describes himself as the volunteer general contractor and volunteer architect for South Shore Habitat for Humanity. And it's undated, so I'm not sure. It's addressed to the planning board. Actually, you probably should see it if we could get
Feel free to
copies.
take them.
That would be great.
Thanks.
Because
The extra-
my question is basically, after you've had a chance to digest it, if you could comment on it, because he apparently believes this would be an impediment to doing what they have been trying to do for a very long time. And I want to make sure, because we all have it, I want to make sure you have a chance to
That's my fault. I
digest
thought you
and
did have it.
respond.
My
And I'm not
mistake.
going to put you on the spot to read it right now, so I don't know, I'll defer to the chair about how to handle that, but that's my question.
Yeah, I would be happy to respond to it, but I'd like to read it first.
certainly.
So I'm on the Sustainability Advisory Committee, and our role is to advise on sustainability things. I'm also, in my day job, as a consulting engineer, and I advise many cities and towns on things dealing with sustainability and meeting their new codes and their climate action plans. A lot of it is focused around electrifying buildings, getting gas out and putting electric solar panels on, electrifying buildings. And just in general terms, I've yet to see any evidence that convinces me it's a bad idea. You know, all the data that I've looked at, and that's what I do for a living, indicates that it benefits the building owner, especially in the long term, as costs are lower.
All set?
Just have
Kevin?
one follow-up. When you get a chance to digest it, and if you have any further response, part of my question, I actually think it's a great idea too, right off the top. I'm tempted to vote against it, though, only on the process end, that it seems like other people, it seems like it hasn't been vetted sufficiently with contractors, all the different constituencies in terms of, and, we have repeatedly in this town enacted things which were good ideas, which were either rejected or generated a lot of negativity because they weren't fully understood, they were misrepresented, they were a combination of things. And that it strikes me that just, my gut tells me this is a year early, that it's a great idea, but it needs more time to be digested. And I say that not as a conclusion that I've reached, but as my inclination, given what I've heard so far, and to give you a chance to sort of, respond to it. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, yeah, I'll just say thanks for that feedback on the process. The Sustainability Advisory Committee has been looking at this for over a year, but has been fully aware from the outset that it is a process that involves a lot of constituencies and stakeholders, which is why we reached out to our building inspector as early as we did in the process to gain his understanding, which is why we subscribed to as many listservs that we did at the state level, which is why we spend as much time as we have on the Mass DOER website talking to folks who are very much more steeped in it than we were initially. And we did have I think a very well attended and put together community forum back in March that we're going to be having a second one, on April 24th, which has been attended by regional coordinator for the Green Communities program at the Mass DOER, who is an expert on the code and who put together a great presentation, I thought. That presentation in March was simulcast by Dedham Cable TV, and we have been calling attention to that through the precinct chairs at town meeting, and we've been publishing word of that and summaries of that in the Dedham Times. So I think we've been trying to do as much as we can to educate the public and especially town meeting about the forum, and we have more work to do on that in the coming weeks, which we all look forward to.
Thank you.
Michael P.
Yeah, thank you. One of the points that Mr. Ballou, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, brings out, I've run across myself too. What if you can't put solar panels in because of trees? What happens then?
There's exceptions for that.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay, so it's not mandatory if
It's not
if it's
mandatory.
not possible. Okay.
And again, it's new construction, so oftentimes the house, not that I'm saying they would reorient the house, but they look at just that issue. If there's excessive shading or the orientation of the roof does not, permit for a solar array on the house, then that would be an exception. And that's in the code. It's not
Yeah,
just,
it's written in.
myself saying that.
Thank you.
All set?
So, yeah, thank you. So to pick up on what Kevin said, I think we've learned the hard way that there needs to be a good, simple story for people to kind of grapple with this. And I read everything you sent to town meeting members and us, and realizing it's a lot there. And so I can be maybe a little more specific than Kevin's, where I think maybe a gap is. I spoke to a Dedham-based builder who, just by chance, the day I spoke to him, he received his HERS certification, so he could be an auditor. So probably a good person to talk to on a good day. And as far as the new residential construction, my understanding, he said that basically with the HERS 42 standards that are becoming part of the stretch code, because you're pretty much there anyway. And he goes, you're not building houses without 600 amp service today anyway. So for the residential, fine. And my hypothesis is that maybe some of the confusion was, he said now to comply with the HERS 42 standards, he put that number of $7,000 to $10,000 a house between additional insulation and other things that you have to do. So maybe that's a little bit of the confusion when people say that this is going to cost a lot. But where the gap is, where I don't understand, and he raised a little bit, is commercial and industrial. And particularly given the challenges we have with our tax base, that we have a relatively low amount of both of those in our community and trying to encourage them. I don't feel comfortable recommending something that we can't say, this is what it's going to cost, and this is what's going to be the impact to our development here in the community. So to me, it's a little more just specifically around commercial and industrial. I don't know if the answer is we hear from developers around that, or it's exactly what the impact would be. So I don't know if they can.
Yeah, I would like to respond. So I deal with commercial developers, commercial properties all the time, and there is an additional cost what people are not thinking about is the life cycle cost. It costs more, but the building cost to operate is less over time. And so while builders and developers may have a problem with it because the first cost is maybe somewhat higher, the building owner, the people that are living and using the building face a lot lower costs for the entire life of the building. And that's the argument that I use with people who are investing in owning buildings, not just building buildings.
Real quick follow-up.
Sure.
So I understand that argument. I guess the thing we'd want to understand is, so what would the impact of choices that developers make coming in here, and would they sort of accept that, and how would that play out, which we don't know, so.
Thank you. Cindy?
Yes, thank you. Personally, if I were building a house, I'd be very interested in doing this. I have no problem, that would be my choice, but to make a choice for the whole town, I feel uncomfortable about doing that. One thing that struck me in all the literature that we received is one of the sentences says that the state's goal is to eventually get to net zero emissions by the year 2050, but the definition of what net zero means is undetermined. It hasn't been defined. So if we don't know what the goal is, how can we implement something when we don't know what the end result should be? So in that context, I think we might need some more information either from the state or getting more data from other municipalities or developers within the next year. Take the year to get more data before proceeding. It just feels it's too early to implement something quite like this. That's it.
Thank you.
I just want to say that state goal of net zero by 2050 would be at least an 85% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. And the way they are defining net zero beyond that is that any carbon output would be offset by.
Was that in the literature? I didn't see that.
It's in the state, like the state
because it
information.
clearly said it was not established yet, so.
What said that?
You gave us a lot of pages.
So I was just going on the research on the state.
Oh, okay.
So that was not provided to us? No?
I mean, we linked to the
Oh, okay.
state website, so.
Yes, it's under this, I don't know where this document originates from. It was in our packet. It's called Info About Dedham's Building Energy Codes, and it's paragraph 14. And the first sentence is, the definition of net zero is evolving.
I think it's
The Federal Department of Energy is compiling different definitions to determine what a net zero code is. So maybe there's a difference between state and federal.
I think it's the code, if that makes sense. Like it's,
net zero code.
right now, we're at the stretch code and the specialized opt-in code, and the state has not yet created a net zero code. That's my understanding.
Okay.
But the state does define net zero as like,
Right, it's in the code, the definition of net zero is in the code, and it's provided by whatever establishments are requiring it. I'm confused about your question.
in the,
It's, do you want to look at, it's number 14 here.
so this, this document is an frequently asked questions document from the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources with all the questions. And then we created a more specific one to Dedham, which it sounds like is maybe on the first page of what you got.
You don't have another copy of that with you, do you?
Oh, here it is.
It's in our email.
I didn't.
This is the
It's
information.
in our email, but I don't think it was ever given to us physically, because I only found it today when I was preparing.
Oh, okay. So, I think they're saying, So this question is like, if you're saying it has to be net zero, why are you also allowing fossil fuels? Because a lot of people, when they conceive of net zero, it's like no burning fossil
All or nothing.
fuels. Right.
Yep.
But the way that net zero is typically defined is that if you do burn fossil fuels or, create carbon emissions, then that has to be offset in some capacity. So either through purchasing, I forget the term, but like carbon offsets through companies or renewable energy credits or whatever it is. And the state has said for the 2050 goal of net zero, that those offsets can only be 15%, that 85% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions relative to 1990 levels, and the remainder can be kind of offset,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
And is that different from a federal code, if there is one?
So there is a federal building code, and I don't think that includes net zero yet. Do you have more insight on
I
that?
don't know that off the top of my head, but most building codes follow the international codes, and then they're amended for various cities and towns, and so everybody gets to define some of the things in the code for their own jurisdictions, but the definition of net zero buildings is many places. I was just trying to find in the code where it was, but maybe we can get back to you and give you some more information.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All set, Cindy?
Thank you.
Liz?
Just follow up to what Michael Lee said to the chair. I think if we decide that we want to hear from developers, I'd also want to hear from climate experts, because I think there are competing and hopefully cooperative interests here.
Good point. Anyone else? I said a couple of things. In preparing this, going through it, how many developers within this area have you invited in, discussed, had conversations with, and what the feedback was? And how many opportunities have you offered for this, for them to come in?
So I've called and talked with 3 of them. I don't recall their names right off the top of my head. And they offered their opinions about what it would cost to do these additional things. But I struggle with finding facts about that. It's just mostly opinions because people haven't done it yet. So, builders will build what clients ask them to build.
And we got those names from Jeremy Rosenberger, because we ourselves are not builders, and so we were like, can you help us out? And so he sent us those names, and we reached out.
And I've spoken to a couple in addition to the 3 that Dave spoke with. And I've spoken to electricians that I know and others who are in the business.
Sure.
A lot of whom have said, again, they see this as a great consumer protection policy for the future homeowners who will be upset if they're come to find out that their house has not, sufficient wire has not been pulled and built in when the building is being constructed to allow for future electrification. It's a pretty minimal cost to do that ahead of time, whereas it's quite expensive to do it 5-10 years down the road when you have to open up walls.
We also have spoken to an architect who basically said it's kind of on the architect to create a better building envelope and to create really good designs and drawings so that then the builders can follow those. I don't know if you want us to try to comment on this,
On,
the letter from Paul. Polo.
briefly, if you have any thoughts, I mean, it was sent forward from the planning board as information.
Yeah, I mean, I think having a little more time to sit down with it would be helpful, but I can already tell that a lot of what's being brought up is the stretch code. So, Mike Emery, you brought this up too, like the HERS rating is exactly the same between the stretch code and the opt-in code. So that wouldn't change at all with this code. And then it's a lot of talking about the cost to install solar and clear cutting trees, which is not something that you have to do. Yeah, and then heat pump technology, which has gotten much better in the last 5 to 10 years. In our community forum in February. There was a question about having kind of like backup heating systems and fossil fuel backups, which is allowed under the opt-in specialized code. You know, I think a lot of people feel like we're forcing them to all electric. We're not. It allows pathways for all the different kinds of heating systems that you'd want to use. But that there is less or no need for a backup heating system with current heat pump technology, even though if you have a heat pump that's maybe 10 years old, you do, but that the technology has gotten so much better that that's maybe not as much of an issue. And then for the solar, I guess I would just point out that there's like a variety of ways to incorporate the solar. It could be that you purchase it outright, in which case it probably is going to be more expensive because there's the cost of adding solar panels that previously there wasn't. The homeowner could finance it, in which case instead of paying for an electric bill, they'd just be paying the payment for the solar panels, which is often kind of very comparable, if not exactly the same as the electric bill every month. Or you could enter into a power purchasing agreement, which the town is doing right now, in which case you're basically not putting an upfront cost. You're just paying kind of a monthly fee, just like you would for an electric bill or something similar. So I'm not touching on everything, but I guess I would just say I think it's kind of like it's not considering the incremental change that the opt-in code would pose. Because it really is pre-wiring solar, which there are a variety of pathways to get into, and then for the large commercial, it's passive house, which is one of the ways you meet stretch code. So it's basically, there's like 2 or 3 ways that you could meet stretch code for commercial building, and passive house is one of them, and so it kind of just pushes more people to that, which is, again, the cost to operate that building is so much better.
Kevin?
First of all, let me just, if I wasn't clear before, I applaud what you're doing, I applaud the direction you're going in. But we're sitting here with a letter, you know, we've got sustainability on this side, and Habitat for Humanity on the other side. And it strikes me that with a little more process, that we would have one side on this, and that we'd have, I mean, I'd much rather be here in the fall or next spring with a broader consensus on this, with a more widely understood proposal, and giving you more of a chance to clear up some of the misconceptions that people have and the confusion between the 2 versions of the code. But, you know, just given everything else that's going on in town, to add one more layer of unnecessary controversy strikes me that it's worth the wait to do a little more process and give you a chance to clarify some of these things, and hopefully be here next year with a letter from this gentleman in support of what you're doing, because I have a feeling that's probably where he'd end up, and once you've, you know, had a chance to, you know, to review all the facts of them. So.
All right, real quick.
Real quick, I read this a while ago, I didn't reread it. Is there a financial benefit to the town adopting this?
I mean,
there's a new program at the Mass DOER for towns that have adopted the opt-in code, which has some funding and some grants available. I'm not an expert on it, but Dylan Bell, who will be at Mass DOER on the 24th, is, and he has slides, you know, on that as well. So yeah, the short answer is yes, and I'll send you guys more information on that tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
I'll also call your attention to a great study called the Economics of Electrifying Buildings, which was done by the Rocky Mountain Institute, which examined just the issues that we're talking about: mixed fuel construction, fossil fuel construction versus all electric construction in 9 cities across the country, and found that in all cases, the cost of all electric construction was lower than mixed fuel. And the go-forward operating costs were lower under all-electric construction than under mixed fuel. Again, not to say that the opt-in code requires all-electric construction. That is the great thing about the code, is that it is flexible, and it allows 3 pathways to compliance, one of which is mixed fuel construction. So.
All set. I just have one quick question. The board that you sit on is an advisory board. I was looking at the town site. advisory board to the board, to the select board. Have they taken a position?
No, we've gone to that board once already. We're scheduled to go back. It keeps getting bumped. Thursday, I think, of this week.
But they have not, up to this point, they have not taken a position on it.
No, I mean,
Okay.
our charter says that we should advise all town committees and boards and town residents. And so we didn't ask them for approval. We just said, we're proposing this, and we want to make sure you're informed. Because we feel like the residents should have an opportunity to consider if they want this protection.
So they have not taken a position, the select board,
No.
one way or the other. Okay, thank you. Anything else?
You just mentioned the
Sure.
bylaw. Last time it was mentioned that the bylaw review unanimously approved it.
They did, yeah. Okay. Anything else? Thanks for coming in, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Before we move to, oh. Our third agenda item, are there any additional questions? With the exception, and I'm going to ask this too, is the board comfortable in taking up Article 18 at this point? Or does anyone feel they need some more information or whatever? Is everyone
I would
comfortable?
like to see that info on the grants and that they mentioned that they would have by tomorrow.
Okay, if you can have that information to us tomorrow, then we will put off this particular article until Thursday night for consideration and deliberations. Okay. The other article raised is Article 17, which is the feasibility study for the Oakdale School. At this point, does anyone have any questions, or is there any, can we also, what's the sense of the board in considering closing the hearing on Article 17? Is everyone comfortable with that? Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll move forward. Could I have a motion, please, to close the public hearings on all articles with the exception of Article 3 and Article 4?
Can I ask
And
a
18.
question?
And 18, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
On Article 12? It was the reports of the boards.
Yes.
Was there a report about the hybrid meetings from the town manager? No? Okay.
Oh,
That's what it is. I just wasn't sure about that.
There will be a report.
please.
Thank you. Leon Goodwin, Town Manager. So, as you recall, this was a request by town meeting for a report back to the town meeting. We have been collecting the data. We're preparing to prepare a report out to town meeting. There was no report that we presented, so you didn't miss anything. And, but
But we can still read the motion.
you can
with
still
in.
read that motion. That's correct.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Good catch. Kevin?
I have a question about Article 15. Maybe I'm not understanding it properly, but it strikes me that the typical way that major building projects come before us is that the responsible body, town manager, school committee, whatever, decides we really need to replace this or that school, or replace the town hall, or build a public safety building, or whatever. And that the town, that responsible body comes in with a recommendation to do a feasibility study and the design and whatever, all that whole process. But those bodies have, a perspective about the overall picture of the town and the relative priorities of the town. This one seems different, the library thing. It's that, my impression, and I could be wrong, which is why I'm raising it, is that a grant opportunity arose, that you could apply for a grant to get a study of your library system, and that you had to pony up some money, but that you'd get a review recommendation, not a design maybe, but an analysis and a recommendation of what you should do. Renovate this one, replace, build a new one, consolidate, whatever it might be. But that it doesn't seem like it's gone through the filter of the respective priorities of the town. I mean, we've had endless discussions about replacing schools, and we're probably 30 years out now in terms of, the various schools. We've got to do Oakdale, we've got to do Riverdale, we've got to do Green Lodge. At some point, we've got to do the high school. And then this kind of comes in out of the blue. And I don't get any sense that anybody's, that the town management has come to a conclusion that, where does this fit? And is this one of those things that we want to pursue? And it sounds kind of free now, if we get the grant. But all of a sudden, we get a report that says, oh, you need to build a new library for $30 million, whatever, and all of a sudden, it's in the queue. And it's competing with, Green Lodge or Riverdale or whatever. And so I'm not against anything, I haven't drawn any conclusions, but just the process seems odd. And I'm curious whether, you ever take Leon about, where would you rank these? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but it's that. I just fear that we're going to get a report dropped in our lap that's going to have some heft to it, and it's going to have some, momentum, and it's going to compete with other priorities without everybody having weighed in on it in advance. So anyway, that's my.
So I think I absolutely agree with you that we don't have a comprehensive list of all the competing priorities. We have schools, we have town buildings, and here we have a library building, which is a town building, but it's actually under the control and custody of the Board of Library Trustees. So that sort of makes it a little bit different. I do know that the Board of Library Trustees over the past number of years, working with the library director and keeping town management advised, have engaged on some strategic planning and looking at their facilities and sort of getting a feel for where they want to be in the future. And part of, I think, that introspection and that look is that they've realized that their current facilities don't really meet their needs. And the next step in that analysis would be this type of feasibility study. But I think everyone's been very upfront that we will have a big decision to make if, at the end of the feasibility study, we are, I think, fortunate enough in one hand to get, the possibility of moving forward with additional funds, which would cover a portion of building a building. But then we need to decide, is that a priority? Because we do know that we have other school facilities that are going to be in the queue, perhaps other town facilities, and then the library. At that point, we'll have a lot more information, though, and I think we'll be able to weigh it. So I don't know that entering into the feasibility study so much as puts us on a course, as much as gives us information to allow us to make that decision at that point in time. I'm not sure of a better way of doing that, because we've done ADA assessments and things like that that tell us that that building is not up to code and up to date. I'm talking about the main library, of course. So I think it's certainly, within the Finance and Warrant Committee's charge to ask about these things and look at them. I do wish we had that town-wide analysis that we're going to be talking about at some point later, so that we could, okay, we've got all of these facilities, how does it rank priority-wise, and we don't have that tool currently. This is an opportunity for us to get more data about one building and options moving forward. But certainly, yeah, it will put us in a position where we will have to decide at some point in the near future whether that is a priority for the town or not. But I will say that the Board of Library Trustees and the Library Director have done a good job keeping town management apprised of their steps. And I'm sure that if you need more information, they would be happy to share it or answer any questions that you have before you take a position.
Do you have a position on this article, on Article 15, as town manager?
As town manager, I think that moving, based on the funding that we are being presented with and this opportunity, I think it's a good idea to move forward with the feasibility study. What that shows us and what that opportunity that gives us in the future, I think we'll have to analyze that at that time, because I don't know what position we'll be in at that time. But I think moving forward with this effort to get that information will give us more information, and we try to make database decisions whenever possible. So that'll help us.
My recollection is, at the end of the day, even the board, the trust fund won't be out any money? Will it be reimbursed, or is it?
No,
Is that
it gets
gone, the
combined.
150 is gone?
No, that is our skin in the game, if you will.
And that's not reimbursed at any point in the process?
That will not be reimbursed, no, that's our match.
Okay, thank you.
But it is out of the trust fund money. that the
Right,
library
right, not on the levy,
Right.
right.
Not on the levy, and not out of free cash.
Okay, thank you.
Michelle?
And that's my, and this might sound like deliberation, but it is a question. I mean, like, yeah.
Let's all be careful.
In some ways, you can say this doesn't cost the town anything, but if they do this feasibility study and the library doesn't get prioritized over schools for 5 or 10 years, it sounds like they would need to start again. And what worries me then is that, am I right that would the library still have any money to put in, or now would we be coming to the town to put in money for a feasibility study?
That's a great question to ask. My understanding is that, yes, the feasibility study is only good for a certain amount of time. I will say that as it stands right now, we have very healthy trust fund balances for the library. This is a fraction of what they have available. I don't know that willingness of the Board of Library Trustees to expend those funds on another feasibility in, say, 5 years. But this certainly isn't going to put us in a spot where we can't afford to do anything else or to redo this if we needed to in the future.
Okay, thanks, that actually helps.
Okay, what's that? What else? Thanks, Liam. Okay, are there any other articles?
I have one question, just,
Sure.
which I think you were gonna, John was gonna do anyway. On 8 to vote, I think we need the number for the cable.
I got it.
Okay.
All right. So that was just waiting for the town accountant to get some time to go through the accounts a little bit to make sure that we have the correct number. The exact number provided is $360,383.21.
Say it again, please.
$360,383.21.
Is that pretty typical, or has that been that's been going down, right?
That's a little actually higher than prior years. You've been seeing, or prior distributions, we've been seeing around 250s pretty much, time and time again.
What's that? Anyone else?
Although, if I may.
Sure.
I think that the general trend is a downward trend just because of the cord cutters out there who are no longer subscribing to cable.
Yep.
And that's where this is derived from, is that 5% surcharge that cable subscribers pay. But, so I think John is absolutely correct that this number is a little higher than the distributions have been. But in general, if you were to ask DVAC, they will say that their revenues are going down as a result of market trends.
Thanks, Liam. Anyone else have any questions on any of the articles with the exception of 3 and 4?
And 18.
And 18, thank you. I don't know, there's a block there. Let me write that down. 3, 4, and 18. That's it. All right, is there a motion to close the public hearing on all the articles with the exception of 3, 4, and 18? Got it right.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none on the vote, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are now into deliberations. Thank you. And our vice chair, who does usually outstanding job. Everybody have the information in front of them? Yeah, okay.
Okay, so for oops, nope. I was already gonna start with the.
Yeah, 3 and 4,
No, we're good. I know, for Article 5.
Yes.
Related to prior outstanding bills, I'll move that it's a recommendation of the Finance and Warrant Committee that it be indefinitely postponed.
Thank you. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Okay, Article 6, related to line item transfers, I move that it's the recommendation of the Finance and Warrant Committee that the following sums of money totaling $1,879,479 be transferred from available funds as scheduled in the chart on the following page to meet additional expenses for the current fiscal year.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Liz. Any discussion? Seeing none on the vote, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Opposed?
Okay, Article 7, related to funds into the Special Purpose Stabilization Fund. I move that it's recommendation of the Finance and Warrant Committee that it be indefinitely postponed.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Any further discussion? On the vote, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Okay, Article 8, related to funds out of the special purpose funds. I move that it's a recommendation of the Finance and Warrant Committee, the sum of $2,503,548 be appropriated from the Robin Race Major Capital Facilities Stabilization Fund for the purpose of paying debt service for fiscal year '25, and further that the sum of $360,383.21 be appropriated from the Special Revenue Fund for Cable for Public Education and Government Programming for the purpose of making a grant to the Dedham Visionary Access Corps for PEG purposes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Liz. Any discussion? Seeing none on the vote, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Article 9, related to general stabilization funds. I move that it's a recommendation of the Finance and Warrant Committee that the total sum of $660,000 be transferred from free cash to the general stabilization fund.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none. On the vote, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Article 10, revolving funds. I move that it's a recommendation of the Finance and Warrant Committee that the pool revolving fund annual expenditure limit be increased from $300,000 to $550,000, and the Park and Recreation revolving fund annual expenditure limit be increased from $300,000 to $500,000, and such amended expenditure limitations to remain applicable from fiscal year to fiscal year until otherwise amended by town meeting prior to July 1 in any fiscal year.
Thank you. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Thanks, Sarah. Any discussion? Seeing none on the vote, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Okay. Article 11, sewer and stormwater enterprise funds. I move that it's a recommendation of the Finance and Warrant Committee that the following sums listed under the heading revenues be raised or transferred from available funds to operate the sewer and stormwater enterprise fund for FY25, and further to approve the FY25 budget for the sewer and stormwater enterprise, including amounts appropriated under Article 4 and included herein for reference only, all is set forth on the chart on the following page.
Thank you. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Cindy. Discussion? Seeing none on the vote, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Article 12, reports of committees. I move that it's a recommendation of the Finance and Warrant Committee that it be so voted with reports from the town manager regarding the use of hybrid meetings by all town boards and committees as proposed in Article 18 of the November 13th, 2023 Fall Annual Town Meeting, and a report from the Planning Board regarding the Designing Dedham 2035 Master Plan.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Liz. Any discussion? Seeing none on the vote, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Article 13, opioid litigation settlement funds. I move that it's a recommendation of the Finance and Warrant Committee that it be so voted.
Thank you. Second, please.
Second.
Thanks, Sarah. Discussion? Seeing none on the vote, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Article 14, related to amending funding sources for certain capital projects. I move that it's a recommendation of the Finance and Warrant Committee that it be indefinitely postponed.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Thanks, Liz. Any discussion? Seeing none on the vote, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous.
Okay, Article 15, regarding the library assessment. I move that it's a recommendation of the Finance and Warrant Committee that it be so voted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sarah. Discussion?
I'll say something.
Michelle?
I really struggled with this. I totally support the library and the idea of a new library someday. But I worried with the same questions that someone brought up earlier about I can't imagine, I have a hard time imagining the town looking to put this ahead of schools. But I brought this up with the library. I was one of the liaisons to the library, so I brought it up then, brought it up again now. And it is their money. And, you know, I worried about them spending it, and then time running out. But it seems like it's what they want to do, and I feel further encouraged by the fact that they would be able to fund it again in the future if they need it, and that more information is better regardless for making decisions. So that's what brought me around to supporting it.
Kevin?
I feel exactly the way Michelle just articulated. I have real reservations about it, but the board voted for it, the town manager supports it. So I'm prepared to go along. But I think we may be throwing away $150,000, you know, not out of revenue, you know, not out of the levy. But it's not, I defer to their judgment.
Okay.
Just all that, and I don't feel we should be afraid of more information about the state of our assets and understanding of yet another valued service that I was also a liaison with Michelle, and learning just how many people use the library. And if anything else, I don't even know if it would be wasted if will it add to the discussion about the priorities in town and the choices that people are making?
Anyone else? I just want to add in, your points are all well taken. I agree. It's, looking at it, there's, in the future, there's going to be a lot of competing and compelling interest out there for our buildings and our facilities. And again, I think the more information that is available, to only this board, to town meeting, but let's say eventually to the voters, is a positive thing. All right. Anyone else? Thank you all. Motion's been made and seconded on the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to abstain. I'd like to abstain.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm abstaining also.
Okay. So. Thank you.
Okay. Article 16.
Article 16, thank you.
Related to the new Renewable Energy Fund, I move that it's a recommendation of the Finance and Warrant Committee that the sum of $50,000 be established as the annual expenditure limit for the Renewable Energy Fund, with such expenditure limit to be applicable from fiscal year to fiscal year unless otherwise amended by town meeting prior to July 1 in any fiscal year.
Thank you. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Thanks, Liz. Any discussion? Seeing none on the vote, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
17 we're doing, right?
We are doing 17, yes.
Okay. Article 17, related to the Oakdale School. I move that it's a recommendation of the Finance and Warrant Committee that the town appropriate the additional sum $263,553 from free cash for the purpose of paying costs of a feasibility study and schematic design for the purpose of studying options for the Oakdale Elementary School, 147 Cedar Street, while also studying possible consolidation with another elementary school, including the payment of all costs incidental or related thereto, and for which town may be eligible for a grant from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, such additional amount to be expended under the direction of the School Building Rehabilitation Committee to supplement the amount appropriated for such purposes by the town under Article 9 of the November 15th, 2021 Annual Town Meeting. The town acknowledges that the MSBA's grant program is a non-entitlement discretionary program based on need as determined by the MSBA, and any cost the town incurs in excess of any grant approved by and received from the MSBA shall be the sole responsibility of the town.
Take a deep breath now. Is there a second?
Second.
Liz seconded. Discussion. On this one, I think I want to go first, if the pleasure of the board. I've gone back and forth on this article several times in reading it and having, in my past life, some experience with this. This, as we just touched on, allows information to be gained so that an informed decision can be made by not only this board, town meeting, and eventually the folks in Dedham, citizens. I think that, again, you have to complete schematic design reports that have to go into the MSBA, which at that point is the basis by which they will respond to our grant, how much they're going to reimburse us. So that is The funding allows that process to go forward. For my perception, or my position, I'm not taking a position whether a standalone or a combined school. This is to get information on what we need to make a decision that's informed. And that's my position on this. Discussion, Mike?
Yeah, I will be voting for this, but only for the sole reason is that I don't want to disrupt the process and jeopardize getting the state aid that you referenced. I am opposed to not proceeding with the combined school. I think financially, it's the wrong decision. But, you know, that train's left the station, and you know, any disruption on this article would potentially put a risk of getting the aid for the school. So I'll be voting yay, but only for that reason.
Thank you. Anyone else? Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. From a financial perspective as well, I don't believe that a standalone school is the best result for all the taxpayers in town. Every taxpayer in town will not benefit from this. However, as Mike Patriacca just said, the train's left the station on that. I think all of us, well, I should only speak for myself, but I'll say this generally as well. I think we all have to respect the process. We've been through this process multiple times. The process was followed just as it should have been followed. The Oakdale School needs to be replaced. There's no question about it. How it gets done, again, it doesn't matter now how people wanted it to happen or how they didn't want it to happen. We're already into this process 5 years and several $100,000, which we run the risk of losing should this not move forward. So with that, I feel I have no choice but to support this article.
Thank you. Mike Emery?
So to me, there's nothing to do but support this, and just perspective-wise, as I pointed out earlier, it's less than 0.5 of 1% of the cost of the project, and not atypical that a large project would, you know, get some revisions. And maybe to amplify, not overlap what you're saying, Mike, there's a process in town with elected officials on the board to make these decisions, and they work through all the politics, and this is where we are. So.
Thank you. Kevin?
I agree, there's no alternative but to support this, but, you know, people should know that, you know, the two things that are changing dramatically as we go through this much delayed process is if you're going to build three schools, that I don't want to say you're going to run out of money before you get to the third, but, you know, just everything we've talked about in terms of the projections is that the financial condition of the town is so much changed from what it was in the heyday of Robin Ray's, number one. And number two, the political situation has changed dramatically. I should say political/legal, because we're getting into override territory. I mean, we were into exclusion territory before, but we're getting into override territory, not just on schools, but on the overall budget. And when you change those two things, that, you know, it really becomes problematic about what happens. You know, you get Oakdale, maybe you get Riverdale, and then by the time you get to Green Lodge, you know, who knows what the fiscal/political situation is going to be. So, you know, it's done. I don't think there's any way to, you know, put the toothpaste back in the tube, but, you know, people should be cognizant of some very fundamental changes that are occurring in this town, politically, legally, fiscally, and none of them are in a good direction. I don't mean to overstate that either. It's not like the sky is falling, but, you know, we need to be more cognizant of it than we have been, I think. So, thank you.
All set?
But I'm going to vote for it, so.
Thank you. Liz?
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything left to say. I agree with everything you said. I agonized over it. You all said what I think, and I'll be in favor of it. We need to move the kids.
Cindy?
Agree with all the comments made, but as we all have, I think we all feel that the more information that is presented to the public, the better. That right now, we have this scenario but we're not going to be flush with Robin Reyes funds in the future. We're not now. So these have to be considered, you know, there'll be hard choices. Yes, you may run a new school and those will be managed and then built, but at what cost? Are you willing to have your taxes raised to accommodate that? So increased in better schools, but there is a cost. So that's just has to be everyone on their consideration.
Thank you all for your comments. So, a motion has been, anything? Oh, okay. Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, on the vote, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. And that is it for that part of our agenda. Where's my agenda?
Budget modifications, right?
Huh?
Budget modifications?
Did you take my agenda?
I don't think so.
Let's see your agenda. Thanks. Okay. What we have now is follow-up discussions on operating budget, capital budget, and Article 3 and 4. Just a background, after our last meeting, requested that any budget modifications, and when I say the word modifications, that means to the increases that were requested in the town manager's budget. That this is not cuts, quote unquote, to any existing budgets. This is looking at the asks by the different department heads, school department that filtered through with the town manager's recommendation. I believe there were several folks sent communications to you, Leon. I also had the opportunity, if anyone wants to state their any modifications that they might have, that can be done tonight. Is there anybody that wants to jump in on any of that? Michael?
Thermal, I didn't get sent it in, but the thermal imaging cameras into 4, knock that back to 2. Just anecdotal, I'm sorry, fire department.
Can we just, let's focus on Article 3 first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then we'll go, that's my fault, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Yeah.
Let's look at just, at this point, Article 3, and then once we finish up with that, we'll look at Article 4. Leon, the information was sent in to you. Any thoughts about what's there, or?
Sure. I wanted to thank you all certainly for your efforts over the weekend, looking at this and throughout this process, and making additional suggestions beyond what we brought forward last week. And I also wanted to just take one step back again, and while the chair is absolutely correct that these are reductions to the increases. The increases are related to level service. So while, yes, you're talking about reducing the impact of increases, what that means is that we will be cutting back on services in many cases, which, is the same on the school side as it is on the town side. But I just wanted to put that out there, that it's not a matter of that these are added initiatives or anything like that are being cut. These are, in many cases, existing services that we would be impacting. So just put that out there. We did take a look, and thank you, Michael and Michelle and Sarah and Dave for your comments, and we'll take others tonight and compile them and do what we can and work with you all. And I think we have a good collaborative process here to figure out a recommendation to town meeting, I hope. So we did take a look at what was recommended, and I can kind of just go through some of those if you want this evening, or how do you want to take them, Mr. Chair? Okay, there was a number of recommendations about vehicle fuel. And
Excuse me, say that again?
Vehicle fuel.
Vehicle fuel, okay.
In police and fire and public works. In public works and police, it looks like they were very accurately budgeted. Those departments, fuel price is unpredictable, and we try to do the best we can. It looks like perhaps we could reduce fire fuel by about $10,000, if that's an area of where you would like to hit. But again, we're hoping to continue a relatively good trend of fuel price, and obviously if that spikes during the year, then we may be coming back to you all in the fall or the spring for a line item transfer, but it's a volatile market. There were some also questions about street lighting, small tools for facilities. Street lighting is the electric cost for it's in the DPW budget. We don't believe that is over budgeted. We tried to base that on prior year, but again, there might be a little bit of wiggle room there. It would be small if we wanted to do that, but something in the range of maybe $10,000 or $15,000 probably could hit the street lighting. The small tools line item and facilities, that was budgeted at $5,000. This is largely because we were hoping to bring some additional tasks in-house, cover some additional repairs. It's a relatively small budget anyway for those types of things, but again, the department head is willing to work with us on some of these things. Utilities for facilities, because facilities pays there's 3 line items within facilities that cover fuel costs. We have the electric, we have gas, and water, sorry. And we believe that there might be a small reduction available in the electric line, but that would, again, we can give you a number before Thursday night on that one, if that's the direction you want to go. But again, we do have contracts locked in for gas through October 2025. The water is relatively stable. Electric is went up a little bit, but we can probably cut maybe 20,000 from that, I guess is what we're suggesting if you wanted to take something.
It's elected?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
And again, we can give you this list at the end of the night if you want. You can
Please.
take notes, but we'll also give it to you. COA vehicle fuel, we believe that that's actually budgeted accurately based on the usage of that vehicle and coming back online. So that vehicle's out of, yes.
Sorry to cut you off. Do we have any info on the grant on the van?
I don't believe so as of yet, but I can ask about that and we'll report back.
Okay, because I thought when Sarah and I met with the department, that fuel was because the van was hopefully coming in. I could be wrong.
I can double check that.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Do you
Certainly.
have questions on the groups as he reports them, or do you want to wait till he gets done with the list?
What I think, what I would offer or suggest is that Leon go through his whole list.
Okay.
We're going to get a copy of this.
Great.
If there's any questions, we can always return to it tonight, but go ahead.
And I'm going to skip capital for right now and just do
Yes,
operating, if
please.
that's okay with you all?
Yep.
Sorry, we broke it down by person, so I'm just going to try to go through here. The Public Works Summer Help, there was a question about whether the 97,000 was the entire program, and that is the entire program for all the summer help for the DPW. There is summer help hired out by some other town departments that would not be impacted by this change. This is just the DPW maintenance crews that are hired. And then there was, under Tier 2, we suggested there was about a $10,000 vehicle savings as well. So taken together, you're at about 107,000 for that, but that would be the entire program. And again, that was put forward by the DPW director as a potential savings. So I think that's, while it would be impactful, it's probably one of the least impactful things you could make a decision on.
And we are going to get this information, right?
Yes.
Okay.
the net savings on the town rover, the custodial rover position, so that's we're spending about $1,100 a week on overtime to cover those 3 buildings currently. I think that the salary line, the personnel line savings would be therefore just under $11,000 versus hiring a full-time person, but you would also save on benefits. So the benefits, so you're talking, in the realm of $30,000, you could safely assume, perhaps more, depending on what kind of health plan they take and whatnot. But, so it's not insignificant, but it's certainly not the full amount. The net savings for the DPW positions, that would be, you would be achieving those, the savings that we listed would be the full savings on those. We don't expect that we would backfill those with overtime or anything like that. We would have less capacity.
And that total amount?
What was that?
What's that total amount?
That was, I had it here, about 161,000, no, 155,000.
73 and 82.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, it's 73 and 82, so about 155,000. Plus benefits.
And we're calculating benefits at about, what, 20% or 25?
I think we said about 20% on these. What do we?
We're using a flat rate of average benchmark plan of 24,000.
So
24,000 per employee? And that, what you just said, does not
that's just
include
health
the
insurance,
benefit.
yeah.
So I'm working my own
That's
rules,
down here.
but, so 150 plus benefits.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
The town planner, the net savings of that one, as we said, it would be salary about 88,000 plus benefits. The downside to that one is, again, there would be both short and long-term impacts. The planning department currently, without that position, is stretched thin. So that means that our economic development planner is taking on some other planning activities, helping out the director for the department. We, as was reported to this board, we're working on a new master plan. There's going to be an implementation plan going with that. There are going to be a lot of activities coming out of the planning department to implement the master plan and hopefully make good on many of the community's objectives. So there would be impacts. It's hard to say how tangible that is in the very short term, but certainly that the planning department is our economic development engine for the town. They're reviewing and approving projects, and the faster we can review, the better information we can have, the faster we bring in that new growth and do it in a good way. So that's, I guess, my spiel on that.
Leon, if I could ask a question on that. That particular position, I think you were very clear on the fact that it's been open for a while and it's been difficult to fill because private sector is paying a lot more for, a similar role. And I'm not trying to add fuel to the fire, but has anyone in town looked at maybe, making an adjustment to make that position a little bit more tempting to somebody out there who might be interested to come along?
We've thought about that. So this is a senior planner position that does require a number of years of experience in the position. That's why the salary is as high as it is for a municipal position. I guess I've been doing this long enough that I remember when planners made a lot less than this and when you used to get like 10 applicants for every job. Things have changed. So we could adjust the position either to require less experience, but we have a department right now that beyond the director, we have a number of new folks in there. And so at this time, we don't think it's the right move for the town to lower the experience requirement. I know you're maybe asking, well, why not raise the salary? Again, maybe in an ideal world where we didn't have other priorities, we could look at something like that. This is a union position too, so it is based on an analysis that we did a couple of years ago, as well as the fact that it's already been collectively bargained at this salary. So we would, nothing's impossible, and perhaps if it were to stay vacant a while longer, we would have to explore some other opportunities. But at this point in time, we're willing to wait for the right candidate to come along, and knowing that it is a tough market right now.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions about that? The, let's see. Capital, the house doctor, that is an addition essentially to our technical services line. It will not decrease technical services. This is so that the facilities department, when they're coming forward with these projects, they can have better information for you all and have much harder numbers in the future, because we have had this very unfortunate experience where we love a project, but then we find out that it costs 2 or 3 times as much, and we've already invested so much toward that we're obligated to go forward, but it really does tie our hands. So this is to try to have better information up front, help us be more strategic. It would not decrease any cost anywhere else, but it would be money basically spent up front to have better information later. I don't know if that's a helpful explainer, but that's the best I can do. Is we think that this is money well spent up front in a project, but certainly it's something we can talk about. And then there was a question about the assistant conservation agent. That position is still unfilled because we have the full-time conservation agent, and then we have the environmental specialist, who is half funded on the operating budget, or approximately half funded, and then half from the stormwater. So that's the cost sharing there. We don't have any plans to fill the assistant conservation position at this time.
So is it in the budget or it's not?
It's not in the budget.
Okay.
And it's a vacant position that's unfunded, but not deleted per se, but
Yeah.
no plan to fill it. There were some recommendations made about rubbish and recycling. We agree wholeheartedly that that is a line item that we really need to get our arms around, adjust going forward. The year-over-year increases there are unsustainable. It's eating up a big portion of our budget. I think there are viable options out there around pay-as-you-throw, or which I think we've talked about this in other ways. It doesn't necessarily take the burden off the taxpayer, but it does provide us some relief on our tax levy to fund the essential services, our schools and things like that we all know are that we're struggling to fund. Planning, zoning, that the personnel situation there as a result of some of our changes. I think that's a great question to ask. Based on my experience, I think we're about staffed the way that I would expect us to be staffed. I did some quick analysis of some other towns, just looking around. I will say we actually compare favorably to a number of towns as far as our admin support goes, because by combining, we are now have the one office manager position, and just looking at, for example, when we did that benchmarking, North Andover came forward as a community that was similar to us. I looked at their org chart real quickly, and conservation has an admin, planning has an admin, economic, they all have admins plus professional staff. So I would say we're favorably situated compared to a community like that. Some of our abutting communities also have, I think, equal or greater staff than us. So I think we're about where we should be. And I think that's is part of the forethought that this board had and others in the past to help us strategize that. So. Police and fire overtime. This is, I feel like we talk about this every year. It's a really hard thing to budget for. We struggle with budgeting it, and then almost inevitably we come back and we have to adjust it via line item transfer, because even the increases that we all think are uncomfortably high don't cover it because of one thing or another. It's a struggle. It's unpredictable, and we have minimum staffing on the fire side, which reduces our flexibility. And I'm not to say that we should run down, but we can't. And then, and we have various forms of leave that we have to cover for, sickness, injury. It really is, it's a situation that's very hard to predict and that we end up having to fund for. On the police side, we can run down more. We try not to force people into overtime situations and things like that, but we still have various types of leave that we cover for, special special events and things like that that we have to staff up for. And, you know, the chief does his best job he can, but again, that budget is somewhat unpredictable and is only getting more so, it seems like. I will say, there was some mention of sick time. I think that there is perhaps a slight change on behavior, not necessarily a policy on our front, that following COVID, people are taking more sick time and they're not coming to work sick, which is probably a good thing. We're not forcing anyone out, just to be clear. We don't have a policy that says, you know, if you have a sniffles, you can't be here. But I think people are just being more cognizant in the workplace and taking their sick time, and maybe in a way that they didn't in the past. So we are seeing a little bit more of that, and that might be driving some of the overtime as well. We talked to the chief about supplies and materials, you know, in the increases year after year. Certain supplies are covered by the collective bargaining agreement. We need to provide turnout gear and things like that to new recruits and folks. So we try to budget based on potential retirements and vacancies, and the cost of all this stuff does continue to go up. We are seeing increases that are, you know, again, higher than what we would hope for in these lines. You know, we could potentially talk to the chief about decreasing this a little bit, but what is unpredictable is if we lose, you know, we've lost several firefighters to the city of Boston in the last year that we didn't expect to. So these things sort of drive our costs a little bit, in addition to the retirements that are in the prime of their career. So that costs us a bit more. So the chief is trying to account for some of this and provide some flexibility. Potentially there's an adjustment there, but it makes it tough to, because we may be coming back to you. We've already spoken about the house doctor. You know, I think, Mike, you asked about setting parameters at the beginning, you know, or asking department heads to adhere to I think I would love to have that conversation next year. I mean, you know, it's not too late, but we're getting very late in the process to go back to and start the departmental process again. But I think next year, if we could do a workshop early in the process and say, okay, you know, what are our budget goals? And if we asked for a level service budget as well as perhaps a sort of a bright line budget that said don't increase your budgets more than this, and have the departments prioritize earlier in the process, I think that would be helpful, and I think, you know, could be an improvement to our process in the future. I think we've low inflation for a number of years, and the ability to fund things at a level service have allowed us to do that. Whereas now we're approaching our levy limit, high inflation, it's all forcing us now to be much more, I think, aware of all these little micro decisions that the departments are making and prioritizing. So next year, I would very much welcome that if we can work together to set a limit and work with the departments to prioritize earlier in the process. I think that would be helpful for all of us.
I just think, looking at next year, and looking at the levy capacity, and looking at 2.5 new growth, local receipts, that's going to have to be a priority. That is going to have to be set. So that budget process, I know sometimes it seems like it goes all year long in the preparation, things like that, but given what it would appear that the starting point might be for FY26, and we haven't decided FY25 yet, but it's there, and I think that's that's going to have to be a big concern headed into next year, and I think your thoughts are on target, and I would strongly urge you to institute those procedures with your department heads, and maybe even get this board, as we have our liaison process.
Absolutely.
That might be something that would be, so our liaisons hear what the discussions are, and then we can move forward from that, so.
And I give Mike P. credit for, you know, he has advocated for that, and I do agree. And the rest of the items I think I have on my list were capital items, but are there any other questions folks want us to address?
On operating?
On operating, yeah.
Yeah, actually, the kind of observations that I want to make in because I want to hear your response to them. So, one of the things I would lean toward of the various categories that you listed, vacant positions, I think, are one of the least painful ways, because you get a chance, it's a tryout. It's like, well, Kevin left a year ago. Anything go wrong since he left? Has anybody noticed the difference? And you can test it. And if in fact you guess wrong, you can always come back in the fall or in the spring to refill a position. So as opposed to layoffs and, which are random and disruptive and stuff. So I'd lean towards the ones that you put on your list. I won't say you recommended them because I know you didn't, but that I think those are relatively safe things. And they're also, if they work out, real reductions that are sustainable over time. The things I would lean against, the first being the OPEB thing, which we talked about last time, which I think is just a pure kick in the can down the road thing, and I think you agreed. But the other one is like fuel and utilities. Fuel and utilities, you're not really making any reduction. You're just changing your guess as to what you think they'll cost. And if you change your guess wrong, you got to pay for it anyway. You're not going to turn the lights off in May. So it really is an accounting kind of mechanism that doesn't really get us where we are. If in fact costs come in lower than we thought, it'll all revert to free cash, and it'll kick the can up the road rather than down the road. So I would lean against those. The pure kick in the can down the road, the change in estimates, is, I mean, if you really have, solid foundation for it, fine. But I wouldn't put any pressure on it to change those estimates. But what I think we're looking for is structural things that are gonna not just be this year, but next year and on down the line. So, anyway.
Response, or?
No, I think I agree with the OPEB. That is truly kicking the can down the road. And I do agree that vacant positions are the least painful way of impacting, or at least impactful to employees, because obviously we're not moving someone out of a job, or they are somewhat random in the fact that we found a moment in time and said, okay, these are the open positions, and it doesn't allow us to necessarily be strategic about where we think we could make changes in the long run if we had more of a runway to do this kind of thing. But, I guess it's the best of the worst scenarios is, I guess, probably the way of doing it. I think that's an option.
I know the scale of the state is much, much different than the town, but one of the things the state has done over the years is when they get in those positions, they have a vacancy review process, that nothing can get filled unless it gets kicked up to, administration and finance, or in this case, your office, and you make the decision. You weigh can we get by without this position? And it's proven sort of effective and way less painful than the alternatives over the years.
Yeah, I will say, in another community that I worked with, we had a position control committee.
Yeah.
Very similar. Every time, that was back in the recession in the 07, 08, 09 timeframe. Every time a position came open, we reviewed it, and we had constituents who were on that committee to review and say, okay, is that a position we hold open or we fill? And
Governor Healy implemented one a week or so ago for the state.
And I suspect going forward, we'll be doing that with all of our positions, just to make sure we're making the best use of our limited resources.
Thank you.
Mike P.?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Kevin, need to be structural versus guessing better on fuel, and the other, one of those positions, the senior planner you were talking about, it sounds like we've been without it for a couple of years.
No,
6 months, you said.
about 6 months, yeah.
Oh, okay, all right, I take that back. But my real point is, it seems like we have two lines of thinking, level funded and level service. Is there a way to come up with something in between? I don't know what it would be, but it seems like level funded, and asking, next year, asking for a 0% increase in all department budgets, that seems a little draconian, even to me. But is there something that, we could figure out in between level funded and level service, create another category? I don't know what the parameters would be. I don't know you know, how it would be structured, but I think that's what we gotta strive for in future budgets.
I will say that, I remember a while ago, everyone talked about like the zero-based budgeting, where you start everything and you have to reprioritize every year. I think maybe that's what you're getting at a little bit, because level services, we're really not prioritizing in that we're saying, okay, what we were doing yesterday is good enough to do tomorrow at whatever cost. And then the other, you know, level funded, which is, okay, the money we're spending yesterday is enough to fund whatever we prioritize, you know, at whatever cost to what we're cutting. And the in-between really is us taking a look at what we think we have available and then prioritizing all the programs and trying to bring forward those that we prioritize and coming up with some parameters around that, I suppose, is probably the in-between that you're talking about.
Liz?
I'm not sure if I'm in the right order, but on the free cash analysis document that we received for Article 3, it says 1.5 million from free cash.
Yes.
That is going into general operating.
Yep. Which is not a best practice, but we've been doing it for years, and I think now is not the time to stop, so.
But
And a little additional clarification, we have been slowly pulling the throttle down over time here to get more in line with best practices.
Yeah.
Sorry.
what's that?
Yeah, nothing right now.
I have two questions.
Sure.
So I was going to ask a utility, I'm still going to ask my utility question, even though I hear you all and that it's just changing a guess. But like you said, if the guess is not good, it obviously helps, right? And so I'm just looking back at last year when you wrote us a memo about budget drivers. And so I don't know if something has changed, but, you know, talking about both the town and the school side having, you know, dramatic utility increases. And then it says the town, what does it say? The town will see a decrease in utility costs in FY '25 due to a new utility contract. So that's what jumped out at me as, because it's budgeted the same number as last year. So I don't know what was, the thinking was and why we don't think it's going to go down.
So I believe that if everything had stayed the same, we would likely would have seen, but we brought on the new public safety building and taken on all the costs of that, whereas that was being covered by the contractor previously. And so I think projecting forward, while we locked in the rate at a better rate, I think our usage is what we're projecting up. But I can get a better answer for you.
I mean, it sounds like you looked and you thought we could
Yeah.
cut 20,000. So if you
Yeah.
feel like you've already analyzed it, I'm not saying to do it again, but.
Yeah, no,
just
I think
this
20,000 would be,
Yeah.
is a safe number if you were looking for a cut there. And again, it really is based on our best guess, based on somewhat of a limited data set, because we've had some large new things come on, like the public safety building.
And then my other question is just a clarification. So I know Mike P. brought up rubbish and recycling, which is obviously something we need to do, but am I right that that's not something we can do for now?
Yeah, there's a long, so we've actually already actively started conversations with the Department of Environmental Services, which has a grant program to switch communities to pay-as-you-throw, or more of a user fee type system. So we've started those. There's conversations. They recommend about an 18-month lead time for those kinds of major shifts in community service. So we've started that. We think that July 1 of 2025 would be, you know, for FY '26 would be probably a good time frame for that. But there's going to be a lot of community discussion and education that would have to lead up to that in order for us to make that
And is it
decision.
mainly about that kind of process and it's not about any kind of contract that we're in, or are we waiting for a contract to be able to change it?
So our existing contract with Boston Karting expires this June. We have a option to go for one more year with them. So I think that would also tie out well, because when we're starting late summer, we're going to be putting together a bid package for a new hauling contract. And I think we'd want to be very clear that there's a potential that it's going to be pay-as-you-throw, because that's not a factor in our current contract. There are also some other variables, whether we would keep the same coat size, how we would go about this. So I think there are some impacts to our contract. We expect to stay with Boston Carding through, until FY '26, but yeah, that is a factor as well.
I just know we talked about this a lot last year too, and I just don't want it to be something that we just like keep talking about, but don't, it sounds like you're starting the process, which is
We've
what I'm
started the
hoping to hear.
process, and I think, at this point, we need to start getting more buy-in from various groups. We've gathered the information, and moving forward, yeah, we can't keep kicking it from year to year, because really, it's crunch time. We know that the levy limit is quickly approaching, and this is such a big component of our general fund budget, and it continues to increase at a really an unsustainable rate, that we need to do something. I think that there's a desire within all of the boards and committees that, I've spoken to at least explore it. So I hope that will lead us to a good result.
Thanks.
Anything else? Just a couple of things. On your list that you presented with us, I think you only talked about the senior planner, and I think Public Works, the foreman, and the SMEO. I think you touched on those.
Yeah, he said those would be the full savings.
Yeah. There are other positions there that I know when I sent my thoughts in,
Yep.
I had included those.
Sure.
Talk about the impact, and particularly the library position, program librarian. Also, we're talking about the youth commission admin, those positions. Because I think when you talk about, as you have mentioned, the systemic budget, structural budget that we have, we can talk about, 15,000 here or 20,000 there, but when you start to add up all the stuff in the areas, those particular areas, and as Kevin alluded to, as a former state employee, the aspect of sometimes not filling positions for a year is a way to address that structural problem that we have.
Yeah, so as I indicated last week, all of these will have some level of service impact. From tax and treasury clerk, that's one of two positions that does that job. So we would be putting more work on a single employee. Obviously, I think management would take on more in that case, and there would likely be the customers would feel that impact in some way, whether it's slower processing time at the counter, maybe they wait on hold for longer when they're calling in about questions, or internal customers, we might not see our batches get deposited as quickly or something like that. These folks are busy, and we would be asking them to do more in a limited amount of time. So I think it's realistic to say that there would be an impact, but that is, I guess that's what I can say about that position. The town custodian, we've talked about that a little bit. We're covering it with overtime currently. The buildings are getting cleaned. It's better to have a full-time employee to give us a little bit more flexibility and consistency there, perhaps, but there's a savings to be had, and I think that's probably one of the less painful modifications if you're looking for a modification there. It would save us in that, like they said, 30-something thousand range. The senior planner, I think that, well, we would love to have that position. Yes, we've had it in the past, and we certainly benefited it from that individual. We were sad to see that individual go. I think if you were to pause that one, that's likely one that we would come back and ask for in the future. I don't think that's one that we would say, okay, it's gone. But the two DPW positions, we do know that our DPW is, they're very, they work hard. They get stretched pretty thin at various times due to a variety of injuries and things like that too. So, Director Flanagan is always advocating for them. I think we're down positions from where we were even at the beginning of the early 90s. But this is an area that if you cut it, you could take a wait and see approach and see what happens. And Hopefully, we won't get too many phone calls, but if we do, then we can always come back and we can look at funding it in a future year. The Youth Commission, the admin assistant there, that's a small department. And we've had a lot of staffing changes in that department in the last, over the last couple of years. Some of them, due to tragedies, and some due to just vacancies. I guess if you were looking to do something there, I mean, this position has been vacant for a while. We had a temp in there for a bit, and now it's just completely vacant. Perhaps middle ground would be a part-time fulfillment of this. I don't know if that's something that you all would entertain, but I think to get some support there would be helpful versus completely cutting it. But perhaps, again, in trying to deliver on our goal of making some structural changes, but also not impacting existing employees, that might be an area that if we could fill that part-time, I think, and also if you kept it at 19 hours or less, then it wouldn't have benefits.
No benefits.
Yeah.
Hold on a minute, Michelle.
Is there any potential to combine that, or maybe their location being, because they're not in town hall, right, they're at the school?
They're at the school.
So this probably makes it hard to combine admin for
Yeah.
there.
Michael P.?
I've been doing budgets for the better part of 40 years in the private world, and one tactic, talk about structural, that we've taken, and I have no idea if it's against some public law to do this, but we would budget in a turnover credit. Like if perpetually, if there's always an open position. You don't know what department it's going to be in, but you always have 3% vacant positions. So you actually budget for that. You have all your positions budgeted for a full year, but you actually budget that as a credit. And what it does is, if somebody, a position was open for 6 months, in your budget, you got a little bit of a boom. And there's the temptation to spend it on something else, i.e. line item transfer. But if you were forced that you couldn't do that because that gap of salary was budgeted, you don't have the ability to spend money on something else. It works in private companies. I don't know if that's something that we can do in this environment, but it is a structural change in how you think about putting a budget together. And I don't know what our perpetual turnover is, like at any given time, out of how many positions we have, how many are open because of turnover. I don't know what that is, but that's what you would budget. It's just an idea.
Yeah, I guess the partial response to that, the control on that, which is a little bit different than a private company, is that we do have limits on how we move the funds around without Finance and Warrant Committee and town meeting approval through the line item transfer process, like you said. And so if we weren't seeking to reuse those funds interdepartmentally via line item transfer, they would wash out the free cash, and then we would have those funds available for the next year to either use on small capital or something along that lines. So the municipal budget law does put in place a sort of a guard about, you can't just reallocate funds willy-nilly, but we do it through the line item transfer. You were correct about that. As far as our turnover rate, I don't have a specific figure, but I will, just anecdotally, municipal government has gotten into a place where I think we're having more turnover than we have historically had, so there are more open positions. And that's just a function of people are moving jobs more, and we don't have people who get a job and stay with it 30-plus years. Which used to be the case. It's just not the case anymore. We do have more turnover than we have. And I know that schools budget for, often there's a savings that schools will budget for, because they assume someone's leaving at the top step and they're going to hire primarily teachers at the lower step. And so there's a delta, and they budget for, many school districts have a
So they
assumption.
estimate it in a different way.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
free cash comes from. All this vacant positions.
Hold on, Liz?
Oh, are you done?
No, I'm sorry.
No, I didn't mean it like that. Listen to me. I didn't know if Michael had a follow-up.
The chair recognizes.
No, I have a follow-up to my question from a few minutes ago, and I saw your reactions when I brought up the free cash. But my question is about, because it's not just not a good practice, it's against the policies that we've just renewed. So how does that impact, because when we went through the policy process, we kept hearing, the ratings, got to follow the policies. You can make an exception, but we make this exception every year. So what's the impact on the bond rating? And also, I just think, talk about a false, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but I think we really need to think, false infusion, because we're not going to have the same level of free cash next year potentially.
So although not best practice, I would say it's also not uncommon. So people need to do this from time to time and have other types of ways of doing, injecting one-time sums of money into the operating budget to get through fiscal years. So that's why it's not really, if we're going to the secondary part of your question is how does that impact that bond rating? That's taken a little bit more with understanding than other things. So as bond rating agencies look at a town, they're not looking at one specific year. They'll ask specific questions on how we're dealing with that one year, but they're looking at trends. They're looking at how we're doing with tax increases, how the ratios are maintained. One-time blips in operating expenses and things of that nature are okay, but they're really looking at those trends. So we're talking about total liquidity back to the 18-20%, where you're comparing yourselves to other towns. So to your question, again, to the line item transfers, yes, they're looking at that trend and saying, okay, are you coming in? Well, look, it's going down. Look at you guys. Oh, you're still stabilization fund. You're transferring, that you're generating these free cash numbers and you're doing what you need to do to keep those high. So it's a full contextual look, not just one line. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
And we were just reaffirmed as a AAA community, which is good, but certainly something to be, we're going to have policies, we should try to adhere to them as best as possible.
I just want to go back to the OPEB, because we have budgeted in there this year, $500,000.
750, right? He
750?
budgeted 750, and
Oh.
he suggested, that was the question, when you wrote the 500 here, where you're suggesting to, not that you were suggesting, were you giving you were listing here to change it to 500,000?
No, that was a potential reduction
Of 500,000.
of 500,000 to 250, which, again, it was not a recommendation,
Yeah.
but it's an option. And we adjusted it during the pandemic. It wasn't.
One year we didn't pay any.
Exactly.
2 years, maybe.
And ultimately, we're going to have to pay the piper, and we should be funding that, even at a higher level than what we're suggesting here. But if you were looking for temporary relief, that's an area that you could.
So that would be a savings of what, 250,000?
500,000? Well, I mean, it could be anything you want it to be below 750.
I must have missed that. So your original proposal was 750?
That's correct.
Then I missed that. And you're saying on your .5 reduction to put it to 500?
Yeah, which would leave 250.
Okay, that's what I had. Okay.
He's saying bring it down by 500, too, yeah.
So bring it down from 500 to 250. Because I know when the paper, the material, the budget ratings digest that we got, I was reading this, and it says, really, excuse me, Dedham maintains a net OPEB liability of $82.2 million, assuming a 6.3 discount rate on June 30th, 2003. The OPEB plan was 27% funded. So we're in good shape with that at this point.
We're in the top tier of municipalities still.
So if we made a payment, but not quite, it would still show that we have intent to make the payment, but it would save some money in terms of the levy. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, but ultimately, we will have to make that up.
Ultimately, you have to do it.
Yep.
Okay. Just
But it kind of boxes you in next year, because the levy didn't go up that $500,000 this year. If we don't pay the $500,000, the total levy increases by $500,000 less. That $500,000 isn't going to be there next year. So you're going to be in the exact same situation where at a certain point, you're just forced to double up or whatever. It's not paying your credit card. That's the problem with it.
Yeah, and I think the hope at one point in time was that when we were fully funded on retirement, we would shift a lot of that to OPEB to, and hopefully try to level things out. And, certainly that's probably a good long-term strategy, but we won't be fully funded for a number of years.
That was before we realized there's no such thing as fully funded retirement.
I.e. pension.
That was a hard lesson.
Brady, quick question for you. Again, we sent the response out today about the impact of the meals and hotel tax to the average residential taxpayer. Also, there was a question in there that I included. We talked about, it used to be $1 million was $100, the translation in terms of things, but you clarified that. Could you just remind me what you said?
Yeah, so there are two questions. The first was the additional revenue, if applied directly to the levy, what would the reduction be? So that $663,395 is equivalent to a $52 reduction for the average single family. And then David asked about a $1 million reduction in the levy. That's equivalent to an $81 reduction in the average single family tax bill.
Okay. So just to be clear, if $1 million was removed or cut from the $1 million to the modifications, it would be an $81 reduction in the average residential tax bill, correct? Okay. And right now, given the information we got the last meeting, that average increase now is $525 as opposed to the $577. Okay. Sure.
Reminder of how the meals and hotels, so that was learning about the other quarters disbursement, but what usually happens, is this like a decision we need to make about how that's used in terms of if it impacts, or it automatically is going to impact it because it changes our revenue assumption?
Great question. So that money automatically will come down off the tax levy. You don't have to do any additional appropriation. So effectively, you've lowered the tax levy by that $663,000 by transferring those revenues in.
Is that what you just said? Sorry.
It's okay.
I understood it better when he said it.
Well, you're straight on, I guess it's sideways.
Will another quarter potentially come in?
Not in this fiscal year. We can always look at as we go into every single fiscal year in budget discussions. This is the new process as we go through. In the event things change as far as debt exclusion and potential projects, as Leon alluded to in the presentations that he's had, that would potentially change future years for Robin Reyes.
But this doesn't really get rid of our problem. This happens all the time, every year. These quarters come in as they come in before the tax rate in January is actually determined. It's not anything new. So if we have a 5% increase in the budget, and that translates to whatever tax rate in January, every year this happens. It isn't like this is something unusual that's happening this year that's going to translate from the operating budget increase to an even better tax rate in January, right? It's just the quarters come in as the quarters come in.
Moving forward, yes. However, structurally, not for the past couple of years. For the past few years, we've been able to give some history on the Robin Reyes Fund. It was able to transfer out to support a significant amount of the debt service. I believe something of over $4 million to offset. However, in last year, we only were able to transfer out $1.8 million, as the correction has been now felt in that year. So now structurally moving forward, you should see whatever the cyclical pieces are moving in or moving out. So when we're talking about what is felt and it's not these one-time pieces, I would just put a caveat and state that it was almost a one-time feel last year, which is what was that significant.
But not this year.
This year was about that $660,000 greater than we had last year because the correction is now put in place for the long term.
Can I just speak a little bit to Robin Reyes too? Like, so this is a fund that we do see direct benefits of economic development into. So if we were to have a new hotel, we would see increased revenues. And we are getting back to pre-pandemic levels now, so that's another positive trend in this revenue source, is that we're back to those 2019-ish numbers, which are great. We suffered losses, as did everyone, but in particular, when restaurants and hotels were hit during the pandemic, our revenues came down. We really are seeing them come much more fully back now. But if we can grow those sectors, the more restaurants we have a thriving dining scene. And, you know, I think Jeremy Rosenberger talked about this a little bit, but by having, by right, restaurants in a number of districts now, we're taking down some of those hurdles to bring in more restaurants. That's something that the planning department has worked on. If we could move forward with perhaps new hotels or things like that nature, bring more rooms on board, that would be great. And we could grow that revenue source. You're right, it's not a cure-all, but that's not a static number either, that we should be able to grow that in the future. And hopefully have some offset to the taxpayers.
Kevin?
But Robin Reyes didn't create any revenue. It was revenue because we adopted a hotel and meals tax, and that money otherwise would have gone into the general fund. And they could have spent it on anything they wanted. Instead, they decided, no, we don't trust ourselves. We're only going to spend it on, building brick and mortar over 10 million, I think was the cap. So,
that's correct.
Yeah.
All right. What I'd like to do at this point, you're going to get us the copy of what you worked off of, so we can look at that and we'll come in ready on Thursday for Article 3. What I'd like to do now is look at Article 4, the capital, so we can go through what's in there. And I have my eye on the time.
No, it's warm in here.
Oh, yeah, it is.
It is warm in here.
Thank you.
Their electric bill.
Yeah. That's all the utilities we saved. What I think the best way to do this is, why don't I mention a department, and if folks have any questions or things that they'd like, we went through this once before in terms of the presentation, but now we're looking at possible cost-saving areas. So if that's agreeable to everyone, we'll start out with Public Works. And let everybody get to the page.
Yeah, I don't even know where that is.
Yeah.
This happened to me last week, too. Don't wait for me.
No, okay. Article 3, is there anything you want to mention, the recommendations or considerations that you would look at, Leon, in terms of the Public Works areas?
There perhaps could be some, well, let me look at, like the columbarium is something that, while would be an added benefit, I think that's a multi-year plan. If we were to defer that, I don't think there would be an immediate impact. It would be, again, deferring something that should be done in the long term to a future year. That's something that we could look at.
Can I ask a question about that?
Certainly.
Is that something that we recover the cost of plus in charges to people, or?
Over the long run, we would, but it would be realized over the long run. It would not be something that would be a really quick return on investment.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there any questions about, I'll just jump in, I apologize, road sidewalks and street plans? Any questions or comments about that? We had a figure of 700,000.
Yeah, I mean, that was something I brought up, and I think someone else did too, just,
So
I know that
I
it's a
think that there's-
trade-off, but.
Yeah, no, there's a good question there, and we budgeted where we did based on the 3-year plan that was approved by the select board that assumes a certain amount of revenue would come in from the Chapter 90 funds.
Okay.
We do now have this, at least a solid expectation that the state will fund what they're calling supplemental Chapter 90, which is as a result of the millionaire's tax. That last year was over $300,000. We could do this a couple of different ways. We could adjust the budget down, or we could say that if those funds come in as expected, we will only spend up to the 1.2 million and save some of that bonding capacity for the next year and come back to you all. I guess we could do, I think there's a little bit of a fear that if the state, which is not in the best economic position itself, financial position itself, is already looking at things like hiring freezes, and, they have some of our grants already that we had, if those programs were impacted via Chapter 90, which are not set, then we would really be in a tough spot because we've adopted a road program and told folks, we're going to get to your street. And that could be a big change in the community. So perhaps if we said, okay, let's try and prioritize spending those funds first, and then the bonded funds up to a 1.2 million per se, for example, and then we could, I'm working, I believe that what we could do is those would be unexpended bond proceeds that we could then repurpose for next year.
Because it would still be used for the same
Yep,
purpose.
it would be still used for the same purpose.
I'm just confused why you're saying the 1.2.
Sorry, so the road program was, the premise is that it was a $1.2 million funded road
Oh,
program.
you're combining the both, are you combining the road sidewalk and Sprague sidewalk?
No,
No, okay.
and this is confusing.
Yeah, where's 1.2?
The 1.2 comes from the fact that Chapter 90 is not reflected anywhere in this budget.
Okay.
So we take the 700,000 plus Chapter 90
Okay.
and assume that we're going to get at least 1.2 million out of those two combined funds. In fact, it's slightly more than that, but now that we have the Chapter 90 supplement, we're really talking about significantly
So
more.
the 300,000 is on top of other money that we already
Yes.
get from the state.
Yeah, we got about, I don't have the number right in front of me. I can pull it up, I have it.
But if instead, I think what you're getting at is if instead of using the 300,000 for additional, we could say we would use that to replace what we're bonding.
Right.
But you still feel like you needed to vote the 700, or if we change that to 400?
I think it would be safe to vote the 700 just because we don't know. Oh, and then certainly I would make a commitment that I will work with the DPW and you all so that we don't spend that extra money.
Right.
That we spend the grant funds first and then we would perhaps either consult with you or say that we'll just save that for next year versus making a decision now, not knowing how much Chapter 90 we're going to get.
Would you have an idea about that in November?
Yes, yeah.
So we can look at that
Yeah.
when we have
Yeah.
our meetings in November? Okay?
Question?
Sure.
Do any benefits besides a well-run and well-paved town come with the PCI? Are there, grant money attached to that, or?
Not that I'm aware of. I do know that, that is one thing that all of our residents benefit from is when they drive around town. If we have good roads, then they think that, that their tax dollars are being spent in a good and efficient way. And a PCI index reflects that because it measures in an objective way the quality of our roads. But I don't think that there's a grant program or anything like that that we benefit from as a result of it.
Thanks.
Anything else? Okay. So now we look down, anything else with the DPW? I think one thing, the F-350 was something that, Michael, you have more elaborate notes than some of us on the F-350.
The 100,000?
Yes, it's free cash.
Well, yeah, this particular vehicle, from what my notes say and what I recall from the conversation, was that it is like just this Rustmobile, and it's just ready to run like Fred Flintstone was driving it, you know, so. That's not in my notes, I just made that up. But,
Really, I'm surprised. We need a note like that every once in a while. Okay, all right.
You're dating yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Let's not get into carpets of age now. Okay.
I'm up there with them.
We didn't recommend the loader. Yes, because originally, I had made notes from the original meeting that it was the
Of the loader.
F-550 Sander and the F-550 that they could postpone, but then Michael said last time that after it got to CEC, they had new information, and they decided those needed to be funded, and they would postpone the loader instead.
All right.
That's correct.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
And I think in subsequent conversations, I think that's all correct. But if there were further reductions, what the DPW director said is that that F-550 is still sort of the one that would be deferred, because the F-600 service truck is definitely needed. That though the Rustmobile, as you so aptly called it, is definitely on the list. But that F-550 and Sander could be deferred to a future year. It certainly needs replacement, but it's one of those ones that we could put more money into and keep it going.
Okay. Anything else with DPW? Anybody has anything? All right, everybody's looking at facilities town. Anything there? Go ahead.
Okay, a question, clarification. We're just asking for additional information that we don't have. We're not giving suggestions in this conversation of, or questioning the validity of anything. Is that correct?
Well, my sense is what we've had, as a matter of fact, with the, I can't even pronounce this, collar barrier here thing. We're talking about perhaps not funding that. That would be a recommendation. That's the sense I got.
So in that vein, I do, there are two things, and I put it in my memo. I totally understand the benefits, and I think they're real, of doing an assessment plan and the house doctor.
Facilities now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I thought we were on facilities.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay. But my, in given where we are and, and these particular things come from free cash and operating capital, by the way, nonetheless, it's still not a hard project. Like you spend $350,000 and you build something and you can touch it. It's a tool. It certainly is a good tool, but are we in the position where we can afford to spend on the tool versus just focusing on real live tangible things to build or repair, like the roofs, which that's very tangible. I mean, they're leaking in the basketball court. You need to replace that, repair that. But these are just tools. That's my question: are we in a position where we can afford these tools as good as they are?
So I guess I can take, and I think that's great feedback, because I think you're right, that there are certain things that they're necessary. Your roof is leaking, you need to replace it. It's one of those painful things to replace, though, because you feel almost no benefit except for you don't have a leaky roof. Whereas the townwide facility, that is a tool that I think we would benefit from in the long run, but is now the right time. We talked to the facilities director. I think that's one thing we could defer. He would quite honestly prefer to fund it all at once. We had talked about spreading it over multiple years at the CEC. We thought that was a reasonable compromise just based on how long it would take. But deferring that one is not going to derail any of our efforts. It will take away a data point that we could use to make longer term strategic plans. That's something that I think the facilities director would offer up as if we're looking for places to cut that are least impactful in the capital, that would be one for him.
Are you talking about the townwide facilities, not the house doctor?
The townwide facility.
The assessment.
The house doctor, I believe, is
That's going to pay for
a
itself.
little bit different
Yeah.
in that that's the expert that we need to help us make sure that we're doing a good job replacing our roof. Because we need that, in advance engineering and architectural expertise to help us look at things so that we are then putting together a good bid package and a good estimate for you all to review so we're not running into some of these situations. So that one immediately leads to the tangible, whereas the townwide assessment is much more longer term. So if we had to let go of one, it would be the townwide assessment. The house doctor is a much more of an operational thing that we believe would pay almost immediate dividends to us. But both of them are hard to explain a little bit, but I think they're a little similar, but one is very much an operational tool that we will use in, next year, the year after, et cetera. Whereas the townwide assessment, that one will be a tool that we'll use for over 10 years, so you could defer that one.
And that's in the operating budget, the house doctor.
The house doctor is in our
Operating.
Yep. It's
And that-
in the technical services area.
Because basically, how many times have we recommended a project, and then next year it's back again because there was not the ability to assess the price and to get to that point, which this house doctor will provide for us. I mean, again, I had a chat with the facility director, a couple things, and when he did mention the fact that townwide, he could live without that right now because he, as Leon just said, he would like to have done all at once, not piecemeal, because then what do? You're going to do 2 schools and then town hall, whatever. So, moving down, town hall planning department counter construction. Anyone?
Yeah. I have a hard time with this one. I mean, we just had a resident here talking about not being able to have enough programs for her daughter in schools.
Mm-hmm.
And the schools are cutting their budget just to get it down to an 8% increase, so they do need to make those cuts. And this is one of those poster childs to me. Yet we're talking about spending $125,000 to put a counter in this town hall, which has had numerous post-opening door expenditures that we've had to make. I just think it's just the wrong message to send. I know it's only $125,000, but I just think it's the wrong message to send.
Michael?
And I just, I've been thinking about this one as well, and being the Finance and Warrant Committee representative on the CEC, and at the time that the original request came in for $250, and through conversations and discussions, it went down to $125. At that time, I think, speaking for myself and based on the way the CEC ended up deliberating and voting, we moved it, forward to you in that respect. And now there's been a whole bunch of additional information made available to this committee. And to piggyback on what Mike Petriacca said, that might be a place we can look at now. It's not like we can't ever build a counter there. It just might, the timing just might not be the right time.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, if I may address
Certainly.
this, or we'll hear from everyone, I guess. Why don't we let everyone talk on it, and I
Okay,
can
fine.
address it.
Cindy, you know?
So yes, the cost is, it grinds against your basic instincts because it's a new building. It's like, why do we have to spend this? But from what we've heard is that there were past encounters with the public that were unsavory, which caused employees to feel unsafe. And, Department of Labor and OSHA and all that all have trainings with HR personnel that employees have the right to feel safe in their work environment. So this could be a legal issue or liability if we don't ensure that safety. Whether it's real or perceived, if the employee says they're not safe, you have to take them for their word and say, yes, we will provide that safe environment.
Michael?
So I'm not sold on that, and I can't comment on any legal obligations we might take in, but I'm convinced that somebody feels unsafe, we have to address it and listen to it. That doesn't mean we have to do the thing that they ask us to do, that the prescription is something physical as a barrier. So, at one point somebody came and showed us that they put together the active shooter, all the different things. That shows you that if someone feels unsafe, first of all, you can assess what's the real risk here. And then you can say, what countermeasures can we put in place to make people feel safe, short of doing something which is a physical barrier? Training for them. What do you do if you feel that someone's threatening? Procedures, processes. How do we engage people that come in? What kind of appointment do they need? Where do we meet? What happens? Maybe we don't allow dogs, them to bring their dogs in if that was one of the scenarios. So all those things should be tried before we go for a physical barrier as a safety issue.
Anyone else?
Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
I
I'm
was
sorry.
gonna say, it was on my list too,
Sarah?
as one that maybe we should
Sorry.
just wait on.
Okay. It's yes and.
We're getting a little bit beyond questions here, so getting into the
Sorry.
deliberation phase.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I will say that, thanks to our facilities department, the planning and zoning and natural resources department, they have been working on this. The 250 number was an initial estimate that we got from a combination of two architects who gave us very general quotes. We ended up selecting one of the architects, and we've moved forward to the design phase, and I think you've seen the most recent iteration of that design. After we told them to design it in a way that would match the aesthetics of the building and the quality of the building, because we don't want to degrade that in any way. But we also told them that we have budget limitations. So we do have a cost estimate that has come in recently that is much less than where we thought it would be. We don't have full confidence that we would be able to achieve that estimate, but I think we could quite reasonably reduce this number by a lot, or potentially fully fund this with ARPA funds, because remember the CEC conversation was that we had said 250, but that we would fund it half with ARPA and half with free cash. I think it's going to be very close whether we can fund it completely with the 125 from ARPA. We may need a little bit of supplement, but this is an area that I would agree that we could reduce. I do think it is, the safety concerns are legitimate. I think that there are perhaps procedural things that we can do to mitigate that. But there is a bad design. Unfortunately, we were encouraging some of these actions by a bad design. Are we obligated to fix that? No. If they told us it was $10 million, we would come up with some other solution. I think that to the extent if we can keep this as a relatively reasonable project and get it done, I think it would be worthwhile. But I agree, 125 here, not necessary. Maybe 25,000 would be.
That would be my suggestion, if we can adjust that ask for 25,000 from free cash.
And we will do our best not to spend it. If we can fund this completely via ARPA.
You mentioned grants too, I think at one.
Well, that's the ARPA grant.
It's, okay, okay, it's one and the same.
Yeah, it's the ARPA grant that we can fund this with. If we can fund it 100% with ARPA, I won't touch the 25,000 of free cash, and they'll make John Arnett very happy and everyone else very happy.
Yes.
And we will, and we'll prioritize that. I would hate to have, a bid come in for $135,000 and have us unable to complete this project.
We would not be happy either.
Yeah.
And many in the town would not be happy, so. So is it agreeable to adjust this?
Question, and I'm trying not to deliberate, I have opinions about this,
I
I'm
know.
trying not to deliberate. So my question is, because I know there are rules around how we can use ARPA funds, I'm gonna hate this, would the training room qualify for ARPA funds?
In the schools, school facilities, part of it was the redo of the training room at the high school?
I don't know if it would. Probably it would, but I think we have not used, again, this is going to sound bureaucratic, we've not used town ARPA money on school facilities, with the exception, I think, of some HVAC work at the very beginning of.
Because of ESSA.
Yeah, because they had a different ARPA fund that, so we've tried to keep them segregated.
That's true. Okay, thanks. So you come back to us for Thursday with adjustment to this to 25,000?
Yeah.
Is that agreeable? Okay. And again, I hesitate.
I mean, and again, it's completely within your prerogative. If you don't fund this, we will figure out other methods. But I do feel like it's a valuable project in the long run. It'll make this building a better building to serve customers and take care of our employees. But I agree with you.
I think we all have opinions after seeing it.
Yeah.
We can all be carpenters or consultants, but we'll leave it up to the folks that can come in and take a look and revise it as best that they can, given the available funds.
We've really done a good job. We're reusing all the existing furniture to really, I think it's taking down as minimal wall as possible. You know, really, I think.
Everybody got there, okay.
Yeah, this is a much reduced scale of project compared to what one architect had recommended to us, so I think we're getting in the right direction.
Okay, any questions further on that? Okay, moving forward, Parks and Rec, just a lawnmower, so. Any questions? Okay. Fire Department, we have the fire engine, ladder 2, and we also have thermal imaging cameras. Michael P.? No. E.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about the thermal imaging cameras. I know we have 8. I understand anecdotally from other fire departments I've spoken to that that's a lot. Comparable, I don't know if we can live with 2.
Yeah, I mean, or we could certainly phase in the purchase of them too. I mean, I think it's a reasonable area to look at.
That's all.
So what would we be looking for an adjustment to eliminate that completely, or to?
I thought what Mike Emery was saying was maybe go to 2, replace 2.
Right. Yeah, that's what jumps out at me, but I don't know if I can justify a specific number there, but.
I think that's reasonable. We just spread the replacement out over more years and get more useful life out of them.
Come back with that proposal then. Okay. Police, basically the operating. Engineering, anything there, which is 2 things, both free cash. Information technology, pretty straightforward. Recommendation on school facilities. Okay. Was there some discussion about the number 2 here, the rubber membrane roof?
Green Lodge School?
Yeah, that's a Green Lodge, yes. Okay.
Just that it isn't in the consolidated project, which it shows in the notes.
Yeah, I think we, see how you crossed out the notes?
Yes,
But you
okay.
didn't need to cross out the rest of it.
Okay, thank you. Anything else there? I think that's it. So you get back to us with an updated list, okay, for Thursday?
And if you have any other questions, send them our way, and we're happy to answer.
I mean,
So how do we approach this Thursday? We'll go through all of these things to see who wants to do what, or what, like, what's next? We haven't done it quite like this before.
I know, this is unique. You're going to provide us in timely fashion, hopefully, with under Article 3, the areas that we discussed, okay? That were discussed and the prices. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm confused
I am too.
what the ask is. You know, we talked about, you know, actually the things we talked about were kind of small. I'm not trying to be critical.
Talk about Article 3?
Yeah, Article 3. But we have the Leon's submission from the last meeting, which had the half and the 1% reduction. Is the ask to come back and with the additional things we talked about from the feedback we gave Leon, is the ask to come back with a revised 0.5% and 1% reduction, which some of the line items may change, or what are we going to do at the next meeting on Article 3, I guess?
I think what we're looking at is clarification on terms of the items and the cost effective, like with the different positions. And then with something we can look at and review. And then when we vote Article 3, if let's say we want to eliminate let's say four positions. What happens then is it's voted on the total of the town manager's budget request minus X amount of dollars. Go ahead.
So, I don't know, I don't know the right answer, but guess what I was hoping is that at some point we would be kind of going through, because at least when we were talking about the operating budget, we were just kind of getting clarification on things and going over the additional suggestions. So I guess I was hoping we would kind of go through line by line to get a sense of where we're all at for which things we want to do and which we don't, which my guess will be a combination of most but not all of what Leon originally gave us, plus some other things.
That's what I was thinking.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the next meeting we'll keep the, obviously, the hearing is open, and we will look at the synopsis that Leon's going to provide, and then we can discuss and put
I
forward
don't know that we need anything else from Leon.
just the list, I think, as much as anything.
So Brady already put together, she compiled all of
Our suggestions.
your suggestions that you
Okay.
submitted, and and it's, and then we, to the extent we had notes, we put them in a note column.
Okay.
Which is what I worked from tonight.
Okay.
Thank you, Brady.
That way we'd have everything originally plus the new things with all the money.
Yeah.
And then we
Yeah.
could go through it. And does that have to be gone through as a hearing, or do we do that through as deliberations? Since we'll be kind of probably arguing for different things that we want. But can we not deliberate till a motion is made? Or can we close the hearings and deliberate before we make the motion?
We have to close the hearing, and then the motions are made of what we have. But do we adjust the motion that's going to be there to reflect what the wishes of the group are?
Yeah, so
in
we
terms
should
of things?
discuss first.
I might ask, looking at this and harkening back to what Brady provided the information, a $1 million cut, a modification to the ask results in an $81 decrease in the average residential tax bill. Do we decide tonight, are we looking for a $500,000 reduction? Are we looking for a $1 million reduction? We did this last year, remember, with the 1%? I mean, yeah, the 1%, Mike?
The $81, percentage-wise, what does that mean for the average tax rate increase? Can we, do we know that?
We can get that information, or? Because originally the 577, which was part of the materials we got April 1st, was a 6.24% increase.
Which is already down some because of the the meals.
So it's
and-
down
Right.
to 525, which would be below a 6% increase.
We're at 5.25 right now?
No, $525 increase,
Yeah,
I
so it
believe.
could be.
So percentage-wise?
Yeah. I mean,
Go ahead.
sorry. I think at this point, as opposed to be shooting for some certain percentage, I think we have enough information on, weighing how much it's gonna hurt for some of these things to go away versus what we're saving on them, to kind of go through it that way and then see where we land, maybe? I don't know.
Thoughts?
Well, the first question sort of that drives the rest is people want to do the OPEB deferral, because that's $500,000.
Right.
So that changes the figure, it's not a 1%, it's a 0.5%
Yeah,
to start with, even
Yes.
if you do everything else.
Or we
Yeah,
check on everything else and then that
Well,
helps us
that's the
see
thing. And-
what we do with OPEB, maybe.
Right, that's the question. If people don't want to do the OPEB deferral, then, it's slim pickings. It's appreciable, but, it kind of puts you in a position to have to do most of the rest, if you're going to have any appreciable, reduction.
It felt like we were talking that I think that I could be wrong. I feel like we're gonna be willing to do most of the rest, is my gut.
Because I just came up with, just with the figures that, what I submitted, just for the, let's say, cutting summer workers in half, cutting the vehicle requests and the tax clerk, senior planner, librarian, youth commission admin is, and then figuring in the benefits, it's about $380,000. That's just my math, which I.
Without any OPEB.
Without any OPEB. If you put the OPEB in, and let's say I fund it for $250,000, the amount is $586,935, which is approximately $500,000.
And that probably is without any of the new things that came up tonight.
Without anything else we talked about in terms of the fuel or other areas, and some of the, and well, a lot of the capital cuts, modifications reflected free cash.
See, I was looking at the sheet that Leon provided to us with the 1%, excuse me, the 0.5% and 1% options. And just purely by not considering decreasing the OPEB contribution, you know, the savings goes down to $879,277. If we take all of the items in option 2, and then adding those things that were discussed this evening with operating and capital, which would add to that difference. I don't know what those numbers are yet because we don't have them, but I mean, that's where I was coming from with all this, and that's what we would consider in the end. So
you're saying all of these?
Everything, you know, the 500,000, if we were to opt to not include that as part of the savings, okay, we'd add it back up to make that 879, and then add in what we discussed tonight. And that would give us
I like that approach.
a number that.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and then I think if anybody has a problem with any line, like that's what we could discuss once we get into, we could
Right.
start from there, and if somebody wants to put something back, once we're deliberating, we could do that.
Because that discussion will come during deliberations. Once we.
Yep.
And the good part is that if you do that and we realize that, you know, we made a mistake on one of the positions and they really, really need it, we can do it in November.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, they're fixable.
Just to be clear, capital savings, if it's free cash, it means that we just have more free cash for, you know, other capital projects in the future or things of that nature. And if they were bonded, it won't have an impact next year, but it would be the following year.
That
But-
comes in the debt service for FY 26.
But the operating capital, that is a real.
Which is in Article 3, though, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like what we want then to have the number that we make the motion for is, well, we want to see all of this plus the things that should we go through what it was we talked about tonight, or everything that we talked about tonight?
I think everything we talked about tonight at
Which
this
was
point.
fire
I
vehicle,
think as
street
close as
lighting.
we can get to a 1% reduction without
Yeah.
OPEB.
Yeah, without OPEB.
Without
And
OPEB.
I incorrectly mentioned capital in that part of the equation. I mean, that will eventually
Yeah.
be a part of the whole equation, but for this exercise with operating, it would just be those adjustments that
So get it as,
Leon mentioned.
so get it as close to $1 million that
We can compile a list based on our discussion tonight and what we previously sent to you,
Yep.
and total that up and send that number to you that
Yep.
is as close to 1% as possible without touching OPEB.
Yeah, I mean, I would say even if it's more or less, it's
Yeah.
fine, if it includes everything, because
Yeah.
then we can make that the motion and then go through,
Right.
and when we deliberate, we could take things out, right?
Because the motion then bases on what the town manager's budget is minus the $1,950,000, whatever. So that is reflective of a $81 cut in addition to the other modification, not cut, modification plus what we had from the meals tax. Okay? Is that agreeable? Is that doable, guys? I'm looking at Brady.
You can ask questions.
You can ask questions, of course you can.
So you're talking cuts separate from the increase in round rate? Because if you include that,
Would you just
then
say?
you're closer.
Yeah, because if we get better, I mean, I don't think we want to say we only want 1%, right? If it equals more, that's great.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, I'm not sure we should put putting a percentage on it, right? If what we want to see is everything on this list, plus the things we brought up tonight.
Yes.
Right.
It's- Yeah.
Yep.
But, so the question is, do we know what, we do, because you have a list that you're
Yep.
talking about.
And your clarification? That answers it? Okay.
I mean, it's a good reminder, when we're discussing how we feel about things, we should remember that that's a factor too. But I think we should see it all.
Is that agreeable with everyone? Okay. Okay. Liz, you asked to,
Yeah, we can talk more about this Thursday, we have a really short, easy meeting. But now that we're closer to wrapping up this budget season, you want to think about, this communication that we're talking about, what are the facts that we need to put on there? So we can throw it out now, or we can adjourn soon and think about it on Thursday, but, what are the facts we want to share with people going into town meeting about the financial situation, excess levy capacity, free cash situation, debt service, what else? So would you think about that, please?
Well, I think we got to put down what the expected tax rate increase would be on the budget that's on the table. And maybe that's after we go through our deliberation on Thursday, but, what is this going to mean to the taxpayer? And I also think, again, it's just facts, but if we show the last 3 years, I think that leads into the position and what could be, well, let me take a step back. So if we could show the last 3 years and then what we think it's going to be after all of the changes we've made, and I don't know if this is possible, but when the excess levy goes away.
that has to be made clear, and I understand what you're saying, because once that excess levy is not there, this town operates, like many others, 2.5% new growth and local receipts.
And how much would we have to reduce our budget when that happens?
Well, this year, I mean, if we just operated this year, it would be about $4.5 million, give or take, on those 3 areas. And I think that the town manager's budget was in the vicinity of almost 7.2. So that's the economic reality that's going to be facing us.
But I guess the thing I'm having a hard time expressing is, when that excess levy goes away, which is going to happen in 26 or whenever, we won't be able to no longer be able to have an excess, a level service budget.
Unless you have an override.
Unless you have an override. And then those two facts, I think, are facts that the average taxpayer needs to understand it's coming. I mean, two things are going to happen in 26 and 27 and beyond. Either services are going to go down, or we're going to have to approve an override.
Following up on Liz's thing about messaging, did the difference between the school committee request and your proposal get resolved? That it was sort of, if I recall, yours was actually higher legally.
I sent that out, didn't you?
But a lot of people on the school side, we have it.
Yeah, I sent that out.
Okay.
It was following discussions.
And are they the same now? The combined facilities?
Almost close.
School?
The problem was, the school department, when they started, did not include the money that was allocated last November into the school.
The school, so sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Chair, but the school department did not include operating capital in their baseline budget. It was about $158,000, I think, that they were off. And so that impacted the way that we were all calculating percentage increases. But the reality is, you're correct, that the town manager recommended budget was slightly higher than the school committee requested budget. However, it was allocated in two different lines, because the education line was slightly lower, but the school facilities line was higher. But as we all know, we appropriate a bottom line budget for the school, so the bottom line budget was higher.
And legally, what we're going to vote on is
correct.
just that bottom line budget, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Because with the correction, the school committee budget with the changes is They had been saying 8.06, it's 7.75%. And the town manager's recommendation is 7.85%. And in,
A tenth of 1% difference, about $50,000 at the end of the day. They're functionally pretty much the same thing, because, again, the school department, within that bottom line, they can move funds around and accomplish their goals how they
Certainly.
see fit.
under fiscal autonomy, the facility component and also the education is under the umbrella of fiscal autonomy for the school department, so. And just a follow-up, I did mention when we had that Zoom call between Leon and, try to say Leon and Ian fast 5 times. Leon, Ian, Nan, and myself. I pressed for when they were going to get the information out to their shareholders, and they indicated that they would have another community meeting to explain the updated version of the budget. So we'll wait and see for that.
Thank you.
All right?
Mr. Chair?
Certainly.
Quick question.
Sure.
In this messaging, do you think it'd be an appropriate time to also introduce the ideas of what the town wants to do long-term to reduce its operating expenses, like the pay-as-you-go garbage, maybe the possible change in health insurance, anything else that's in the future planning purposes, or is it too early to do that?
I think my gut read would be, I think what we have to do is get the message out there as it affects the current school, the current budget season, and what town meeting members and what the folks in town can expect. I think part of that would be to touching on what may be happening. Again, if money is taken out at town meeting, the only place it can come is the excess levy, which further decreases any flexibility in the '06 budget. Correct?
That's correct, and to get into Mike P's point, we are using, I believe it's about $3 million in net excess capacity this year. Based on the assumptions that we had going into this before any modifications, we were projecting about 1.5 left in excess capacity next year. So we are automatically starting in the hole by 1.5 million. And then that's, holding everything else constant, and new growth and things of that nature. So I guess the effect we can help that next year and have a little bit more excess levy capacity, that's great. And then, but we should be probably talking about structural changes that we'll need to make in order to come in under that threshold. Things like pay-as-you-throw, which approximately $3 million. It would help us avoid that override vote that is otherwise going to be inevitable if we want to maintain anything close to level service.
Because that $3 million savings in terms of the rubbish and recycling, roughly $3 million, 2.8, whatever, would offset what was taken out of the excess levy for this year to get us to a level service or close to a level service budget. So $3 million and $3 million, 2.8.
I was just going to say, and Mike, I have those 2 points in here, thank you. I think we want to paint a picture of where we're going, so, that was our intent with this communication to begin with, is make sure we do our best to give people a full picture. But I think if we start to introduce new concepts that we're not voting on this year, I think simplicity is the message right now. Because I don't think we want to, we don't want the discussions on town meeting floor to be about a program that we haven't introduced yet.
We also don't, we're risk sounding like we're prescribing anything or recommending anything. I think it's just, we're all trying to get on the same page where we are. And then, but all those things could be.
Because if you look at what we're discussing now in terms of the positions, the FTEs on the municipal side, we would be, if, not going to get into deliberations, but if some of those positions are not recommended, school department's already talking about, I think the last number I heard was, because they had retirement somewhere around 10 or 11 positions. So the optics is there, because the town and the municipal is also facing the same issues the school departments are. School department is. And I think, not for any other reason, but I think, that's what has to be made. I mean, we heard tonight a very compelling presentation.
Is this going to be in the Dedham Times?
I think we've talked about that. I don't think we've finalized distribution yet.
We talked about a number of areas, but
If possible, I think as many mediums as we can get it out in, not just one, would would be best.
Yeah, and we talked about not doing it as a letter, so it won't get lost,
Right.
doing it as a contributing piece.
Contributing to the thing. Also talking about getting the information to the district chairs so that they can inform the town meeting members.
Or we could do a blast message to all the email addresses that are on the town meeting roster.
Do that too, yeah.
I mean, that way we
Even
can
a mail.
ensure that everyone will get it.
Yeah.
Someone said to me, we're talking about this, is there a way to do the mailing to all the taxpayers? And I said, that's financial, and we'd have to look at that at some point. But I don't think there's any utility bills going out that during now and then.
Get it in the August tax bills.
Would it be, oh, excuse me,
Go ahead.
would it be posted also on the town website?
Oh, yes,
Oh, definitely.
yes,
Okay.
oh, definitely, definitely.
But how would we direct traffic so people would know to look there?
I think once we know where it's gonna be, whatever the method is, I mean, we'll all know.
Reference.
And then we can network with our people and the people we know and things like that.
After we're done with this, we should dedicate a portion of a future meeting to GIC and having you, do a shtick about, what you looked at, what the implications are.
Oh, the healthcare?
GIC, yeah.
Oh, yeah, oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you. Well, I'm only 25 minutes late.
No, it's not.
Anything else? I don't think there's anything under all the new business, so can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.